As mayor, I call this meeting of Staunton City Council to order. I note that this meeting is being broadcast over the city's cable channel and streamed live on the city's website so that members of the public may hear our meeting. The meeting is also being recorded. I ask the clerk of council to call the roll for confirmation of those council members present for today's meeting.
Mayor Oakes.
Here.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
Here.
Ms. Dahl.
Here.
Mr. Holmes.
I know he's here.
You want to call him?
All right.
Ms. Darby.
Here.
Ms. Mead.
Here.
Mr. Claffey.
Here.
Have confirmed that all members are present.
Alrighty. I ask that City Manager Steve Rosenberg note the participation of any city officials or colleagues or anyone else during today's meeting by Zoom or telephone.
Madam Mayor, the only individuals participating on Zoom are Council members Mead, Dahl, and Vice Mayor Robertson. All other city officials are participating in person in council chambers.
Thank you. Please let me mention that notice reasonable under the circumstances of this meeting has been given to the public contemporaneously with notice provided to members of City Council. In addition to limited public seating in City Hall, access to this meeting has been provided to the public by audio feed on the city's cable channel and the city's website. During this work session, as in the past, there will be no opportunity for public comment. Public comment will be received during council's regular meeting, which will begin at 7:30 p.m. Instructions for public comment by telephone can be found on agenda for the regular meeting and on council's website at www.ci.government.us/city-council. Also, let me highlight and have reflected in the meeting minutes that this meeting, although being conducted in person, is also being conducted by Zoom, with virtual participation by certain members of council, giving the catastrophic nature of the declared emergency and disaster related to the COVID-19 outbreak, which is part of the total circumstances makes it impractical or unsafe to assemble in a single location. The meeting is being held consistent with the City Ordinance 202004 regarding continuity of government, a copy of which can be found online at www.stanton.va.us/COGORD2020-04. All right. With that, I'd also like to comment about masks. If you come into the chambers, even City Hall itself, please wear a mask at all times. You may remove your mask when you're speaking at the microphone. We do offer wipes that you can disinfect the microphone with if you so choose. Excuse me, I'm getting tongue-tied. If you so choose to do so. There we go. We do have it set where you are a few feet back from the microphone. However, that is your option. But again, please keep your mask on at all times otherwise. I'd also like to remind the council members when you would like to speak, please address the mayor and I will recognize you. All right. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of work session and regular meeting agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Darby.
I move that council adopt the work and regular session agendas with the addition of item E to the regular session agenda for consideration of adoption of a resolution regarding pending litigation.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Madam Mayor. Second. Second.
All right. Councilman Claffey, second. Any further discussion? Ms. Simmons, please call the roll.
Mr. Claffey.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes.
Aye.
Ms. Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Oakes.
Aye.
Ms. Mead.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
Aye.
Ms. Dahl.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the update from the Staunton City Schools regarding reopening plan. Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. This evening, we're joined by Dr. Garrett Smith, the Superintendent of Staunton City Schools, as well as several members of the Staunton School Board. And I welcome all of them this evening and invite Dr. Smith to introduce who joins him and then invite him to proceed with his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. In this arrangement, you want me to stand behind the chair?
That's the idea,
That's the
yes.
idea.
And the
Yes,
microphone will pick you up.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor Oakes and members of City Council. Thank you for allowing us to give an update tonight. With me tonight and participating in the presentation is Mr. Brad Wagner, our Budget Director. So we have two pieces to our presentation tonight. First, we want to provide you with the same information about our revised budget that we presented to the previous City Council just a few months ago on April 23rd. And second, we wanted to give you an update on the reopening of Staunton City Schools, which just happened this week.
I believe all the council members have received a copy of our presentation. Unfortunately, we can't do it electronically because of space concerns. So I'm going to try to help you follow along with the pages. So I flipped to the first page, which is city investment in city schools. The original fiscal year 21 school budget was approved by the school board 4 days before the governor announced the statewide school closures. When the schools closed, we set to work revising the budget, which was ultimately presented to and approved by the City Council on April 23rd. The pandemic has constrained economic activity, resulting in lower government revenues, which means lower revenues for the schools. The first step in revising the budget was to reforecast revenues. We projected a 25% reduction in state sales tax and lottery proceeds, consistent with the city's estimates, and worth about $1.1 million in revenue. And as this slide details, $1.9 million was cut from appropriations from the city, which went from $13.9 million to $12 million, a 13.6% drop. To provide another perspective, the city's investment in education this year is $1.8 million less than last year.
Okay, now we're moving to the third slide. It's got the four kind of rectangles on the far left. It says 2% pay raise. So I wanted to discuss the why behind what we were trying to do with our original budget before Governor Northam closed schools on March 13th. We're in a competitive environment with a teacher shortage, and we were able to offer a 3% raise in each of my first 2 years here. We knew it was going to be a tough budget year on the city side with the jail and some other factors, so we kept it at 2% this year. Once schools closed, the proposed raise went away. Our goal during the closure was not to cut any positions. Staunton City Schools is the largest employer in the city, so we continued to look for other places to cut. Strategically, and with money allotted in the state budget, we wanted to expand our preschool program to clear the waiting list for families, with the ultimate goal of having the same number of preschool and kindergarten sections. Getting students in at a younger age is the most effective way to reduce learning gaps. So essentially, we wanted to move from having 13 grade levels to having 14 grade levels. Instead of just being K-12, we want to get to where we have pre-K-12. And if we can get the same amount of sections for preschool as we do for kindergarten, we think we can really make some inroads with students. I went to the preschool summit at University of Virginia last year and was really impressed with the research that I heard there. So that's one of our strategic objectives. But unfortunately, that got cut out of the budget. And so we had an extra position for a preschool teacher and a preschool instructional assistant. That would have eliminated the waiting list that we have every year, but that got cut. We also were planning for some extra administrative help in the central office in the form of a secretary. That got cut. We wanted to add a female health PE instructional assistant at the high school because we don't have any female PE teachers currently at the high school, and we need somebody to help with locker room supervision. We were hoping to add a maintenance worker in January, and we were looking at January to cut the cost in half, and a part-time bus driver for Bessie Weller. All of those positions were cut from the budget.
We're going to stay on that same slide for a minute. The lower revenues translated into a $2.1 million net reduction in the education fund. The education fund comprises more than 87% of the overall school budget. This means that 6.1% was ultimately cut from the school's principal operating accounts. The education fund was balanced through a combination of new revenues and spending cuts. New revenues were comprised of one-time funding sources, such as federal ESSER funds, part of the CARES Act, and tapping into the school's fund balance reserves. On the other side of the equation, a wide range of spending cuts were made. These we can group into three categories. First, practically all new initiatives that Dr. Smith outlined were eliminated. Second, a lot of routine repair and maintenance to both the physical plant and technology systems were deferred. This includes canceling the annual transfer of $100,000 into the school's CIP fund. The third category of cuts consisted of basic belt tightening, which include, among many measures, cutting funding for substitute teachers by nearly 60%, eliminating all funding for the student advocate publication, cutting travel budgets and tuition reimbursement for teachers, trimming technology support staff, and cutting funding for new band instruments. Finally, I should note that in spite of the economic impact of the pandemic, the VRS rate increase mandated by Richmond was not rescinded. This represents approximately $176,000 in new spending that we could not avoid.
The retirement services. Retirement services.
It's the Virginia retirement system, yes. I'm going to flip to the next slide now, which is CARES Act support. Both the city and the schools benefited from financial support via the federal CARES Act. The city allocated approximately $1.6 million of its CARES Act funding to the schools. These funds could only be used to address needs precipitated by the coronavirus, and therefore are not reflected in the statistics that I presented to you previously. As this slide outlines, the schools applied these funds to technology for hybrid and virtual learning, sanitation supplies, PPE, and building upgrades to protect students and staff, meal packaging and delivery systems to safely provide meals to students, and childcare for essential school and city employees.
Okay, on the next slide, it says staffing deficit at the top. This is additional information that we also shared with the previous city council a few months ago. So we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Even in a small school division like Staunton, we've lost over 90 positions since the recession in 2008, including over 50 full-time positions. Our level of state funding is just getting back to an equivalent level that it was in 2008, but that doesn't account for at least 14% inflation. So the amount of state funding is getting back to where it was in 2008, but it's a lot different time than it was in 2008. In my first year as superintendent, I quickly realized we had a leadership issue at Bessie Weller Elementary School. I sent Rich Fletcher from our central office to take over as principal, and he's done a fantastic job. But we never replaced that central office position. At the end of the first semester, in my first year, we had an opportunity to add an assistant superintendent. That's the way Gene Colvin had set up the budget. Instead of making that higher, we added positions at Shelburne, which I felt was understaffed. We wanted to add positions where they would have a more direct and tangible impact on students and staff. On the next slide, virtual tipping point. For this particular slide, I'm going to have to go into my teacher mode a little bit. So at the elementary school, in order to accommodate both models, the hybrid and the virtual model, we decided to dedicate one teacher to virtual learning per grade level. By doing this, we can ensure that students were learning synchronously. In other words, in real time. So all the students would be learning in real time. Everyone would have an actual teacher, whether you were virtual or in person. When our percentage of families choosing the virtual option was holding steady at 23%, this was feasible. As more families began to choose the virtual option, staffing both models became more challenging. Here's an example. At one of our elementary schools, we have a 5th grade cohort that consists of 68 students and 3 teachers. At approximately 23% choosing virtual, we had 16 students in the virtual class. And that was okay because that left us with 2 in-person classes of 13 each. Remember, we're on an A-B schedule. 13 is the most amount of students we can fit in one of our elementary school classrooms, socially distanced. So we were okay even with a large class size there. But the percentage of parents wanting virtual continued to climb to 27 students, whereas then 40% of the total grade level of 5th graders. That number is too large for an effective virtual class. 27 students in a virtual class is not a good model for instruction. So we're left with 2 options at that point. We could move one of the 2 in-person teachers to virtual, and then we'd have 2 virtual groups of 13 and 14. Or we could leave, but the problem with doing that, if we move them into virtual, that would leave the remaining in-person teacher, because remember we only have 3 teachers total, that would leave the remaining in-person teacher with 20 students on A day and 21 students on B day. Again, we can only fit 13 students in a class. So in this particular example, 40% of families choosing the virtual option put us past our tipping point for being able to staff both the blended and virtual models and deliver quality instruction. Does anybody have any questions about that? I know that's...
Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So what's the process going to be to look at bringing the kids back to school, since we couldn't start school and then send them home if the numbers of COVID cases went up? Thankfully, we've been blessed so far. The number has been low. So what do we do? I mean, it sounds like it's a staffing issue. So how are we going to fix that problem to bring kids back to school?
Okay. I am going to build up to that point, Ms. Darby. And if I haven't answered it satisfactorily, I'll return to it at the end of the presentation to that question. Okay. We did have some teacher videos from the first couple of days, and hopefully, because we sent them out to everybody, that everyone will be able, like city council and school boards will be able to see, and we'll post this whole presentation so the public can see it tomorrow, including the teacher videos. But when we got to the end of last school year, I asked our teachers to stay connected because we needed to continue our training throughout the summer, unlike past years. You may have already reviewed the information about our SCS University virtual edition in this document here that I asked Steve and Leslie to share with you on Monday. Hopefully everybody got that, pretty comprehensive. We wanted to prepare for the most restrictive environment in case we had to open with either a blended or virtual model. Teachers volunteered close to 10,000 hours this summer in SCS University to learn more about virtual instruction. Our teachers rose to the challenge and did an excellent job of preparing themselves. They really switched to a whole different model of teaching in a summer's work. And then although we're not able to share the videos tonight, I just wanted to kind of describe them to people. In the first video, we talk about how this year has been different without a doubt. The preparation's been immense. The first video features Makiba Robinson, an 8th grade English teacher at Shelburne Middle School. This summer, she co-led an SCS University session on building relationships with students in a virtual setting. This skill, which is such an important part of learning, requires different thought in an online setting, and Ms. Robinson helps to explain some of the additional steps in thinking that this is required for the upcoming year. So again, people will be able to view that video tomorrow. Even though students are working with their teacher only 2 to 3 hours a day in a whole group, Teachers are working with other small groups of students or communicating with students and families throughout the entire school day. Teachers are having to rethink all aspects of their instruction. Simple things that worked in a normal setting have to be reconsidered in an online setting. In this video, third grade teacher Krista Smith of Ware Elementary helps explain how she has to think through her math lesson differently. And then there's one more short video of Krista Smith, third grade teacher from Ware. We asked her to consider one of the greatest highlights so far within the first few days, and it's been 2 days. So she had to pick a highlight for the first 2 days. She shared that at the end of the first day of school, she had a conversation with the parent during her office hours. The parent wanted to thank her, the office staff, and our technology department for all the hard work that went into preparing for this school year. The parent said she was nervous about how things would work, but her child had a really positive first day, and she was confident it was going to be a great year. The next slide has our different employee groups, other working employees. Again, I know you've had a chance to review that more in depth with the document that was shared on Monday, but I just want to share that everybody's working hard and some positions have had to be repurposed. I've been over at the construction site a couple of times this week. We have bus drivers working with maintenance crew and custodians, moving all the teachers' furniture and possessions in, file cabinets and those types of things. We also have instructional assistants providing child care for our essential employees, which in our case is our staff. On the next slide, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we do still have some groups of students attending school in person at this time. Those include our preschoolers who obviously, would really struggle to learn virtually since they've never been in school before. And they're doing a great job following all the rules, at least keeping their masks on. Socially distancing is very difficult for 3 and 4-year-olds. And then we have English learners receiving in-person instruction. Some of our students with disabilities are receiving in-person instruction under the guidance of our health and safety plan. But our goal is to get all students back into the classroom as soon as it is safe to do so.
Dr. Smith, I have to ask, how do you get a preschooler to wear the mask?
They you know what? It's really strange. They really do it.
Uh-huh.
And we've heard some of them like it so much they think it looks cool or something. They won't even take it off when they get home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we thought they'd be the hardest group, but they're really the most, they're really
Most compliant.
Yeah, they really are. We have this quote on here: as we navigate through these uncertainties, this is a time to come together and not pull apart. We stay ready to help all of our students have a successful and rewarding school year. So I just want to emphasize that this is a temporary situation that we're in. And again, we're fully committed to getting our students back for in-person learning as soon as we possibly can. We're already planning to bring students back for outdoor activities, like socializing kind of activities on Mondays, and in the afternoons using our PE, art, and music teachers, coaches, and club sponsors. As long as we're outside and socially distanced at 10 feet, we don't need to wear masks. Our high school athletes are already training, and our high school band members are also practicing. Our STEP team is preparing to do the same. What we want to do is raise the comfort level for families and staff, and then start to phase students back in this semester. So even though the school board voted to open virtually for the entire first semester, they've allowed me enough latitude to bring students back earlier, and that's what we plan to do. So Ms. Darby, to answer your question, I think if we can get families more comfortable with in-person learning, staff more comfortable with in-person learning. I've been going around to schools, and this isn't what we signed up for. We love kids. It's almost pathetic to watch in some schools where there's just a few kids, the teachers just running to them, like a moth to a flame. Some children, the kids are super spoiled because they're the only ones around, and every adult is paying attention to them. So I've heard from lots of our teachers, that especially teachers of the younger students, that they're ready to have their kids back, and we're going to figure out the fastest way to do that. So again, to answer your question, I think we start coming back and socializing. We start getting everybody comfortable that this is going to be okay, that our plan can work, and then we start to phase students back in as quickly as we can.
Dr. Smith, do you have any kind of idea of a time frame for that?
I'd say about 2 weeks. So let's get this virtual up and going for a couple of weeks. Let's get the social activities going, and then as soon as people are comfortable and ready to go, we're ready to go. We can switch back to it. We've already planned it all out. So as far as bus routes, meals, we can make the switch. We're ready to pivot. We've done all the work for virtual. We've done all the work for hybrid. So we feel confident that we can switch in and out. I think we're probably one of the best equipped school divisions in the state as far as technology. We have devices for all of our students. The only ones we didn't have devices for were pre-K, K, and 1. And to Brad's point, we use CARES Act money to get tablets for those students. All of our families, if they don't have internet, we've given them hotspots. Everybody else has refurbished Chromebooks. So we're in good shape to be in a virtual mode, even though it's not our preference. And even when we come back in a hybrid, we'll still be in good shape to do that. So, you know, we're in the kid business, and we can't wait to get kids back. That's what we're hoping for. So I also wanted to thank all of you for your support of the Staunton High School construction project. If we had time, I'd love to give you more information, but I would like to invite you to tour the building in the near future. Ms. Darby has toured the building recently. There's furniture in it now.
Yay.
Yep. And I can provide an update on everything while we're walking around. If we run out of time for questions tonight, please know that you can send those to me, or I'd be happy to meet with any of you individually at your convenience. If you don't have any other questions, have a great evening, but I'll stay up here for any questions.
This is Brenda Mead. I have a question.
Okay.
Brenda Mead.
Yes, well, actually 2 questions. One, do you have any idea how many of the children who are attending virtually are home alone?
Well, we don't really have any statistic to measure that, but just anecdotally, going around and speaking to teachers, we've kind of had the opposite problem so far. The parents are jumping in and trying to do everything for their children so far. We have also been in a partnership with a group that's named themselves C4. It's a child care partnership that involves.
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay. If everyone,
The other question I had, Dr. Smith, was what is an acceptable level of infection, COVID-19 infection, that would cause you to pivot and move back toward more virtual?
well, I think if you look at the statistics for Staunton right now from the Virginia Department of Health, we're probably right at about an acceptable level. Now, we went from low transmission and low % positivity 2 weeks ago to moderate last week, but we just dropped again this week. Dr. Cornegay from the Virginia Department of Health sends me a 7-day rolling average, and she helps me interpret it. So there's supposed to be a spike here in early September, but right now our numbers in Staunton look pretty good. Ms. Mead, it's more, I think, about getting everybody comfortable with doing it and bringing people back. If we can get those enough % virtual down low enough, families who just want all virtual, then we'll be able to adequately staff both models and deliver excellent instruction, which is our goal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions?
This is Carolyn Dahl.
Carolyn Dole?
Dr. Smith, I wanted to report that my grandson and my daughter are both pleased with the virtual schedule so far. He's a 3rd grader, and his teacher's name is Ms. Roblin, I believe. I don't know how you pronounce it, but they both seem pretty pleased with the schedule and the learning activities that are being done. So just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. And I will say that Kim Crocker, the principal at Miss Wayne, had several positive responses, and that was one of them. So I did see that one. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Claffey?
I just want to thank you for all the wheeling on a dime you've had to do this summer. And I'm aware of exactly that you're changing your direction on a weekly basis, or maybe an hourly basis, I'm sure you feel like. So I want to thank you for that. I'm ecstatic to hear that you're hoping to get these kids back into the school before the semester is out. And it's great news and great direction. And thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Any additional comments or questions?
Madam Mayor,
Vice Mayor Robertson?
just want to ask, and this is probably an unfathomable question to even answer, but are there any studies or are there any indications about if there's a learning curve or some of these, especially the younger ones, do they suffer at all? Do they lose any time not being in class?
Yes, even more concerning, Mr. Robinson, is the social emotional aspect. We've already been working with some families and students who, now that they're back in school, we know they've really been struggling. We are doing counseling at Dixon for some of our high school students already. And so we're bringing students in individually and in some small groups to work with them. We assumed that this was going to be the case. As far as learning gaps, yes, they certainly exist too. And we'll be testing our kids to see where those gaps are so we can work really hard to fill them in. So yeah, learning gaps are a problem, but even more, it's those social emotional deficits that are really hurting us. During the closure, our Child Protective Service referrals dropped off the cliff, and that's really bad news because all that means is that the kids don't have a safe place or a safe person to report what's happening to them.
Okay. All right, I have a question. As far as the meals are concerned, can you describe how that's being handled?
Sure. So during the closure, we delivered over 163,000 meals. And, our bus drivers helped us with that. Some of our instructional assistants volunteered, our school nutrition workers. I mean, they carried us. They were really the heroes back in the spring during the closure. Now we just qualified under this community eligibility provision to provide free breakfast and lunch to all the kids in all of our schools. We think this is a huge game changer. It's a huge piece of our equity work. We've been pushing hard on this for 3 years and we finally got it. So right now we have pickups at the four of the schools,
Okay.
the 3 elementaries in Shelburne on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Amanda Warren, our director, sent out a survey to see which families could come pick up. We still have other families that are unable to get there.
Sure.
So we will deliver the food to them just like we did in the spring. We're going to make sure everybody's fed. And our food is great. If you've never tried it, we have wonderful food.
I'll put my
I want
order
to say
in.
that in the presence of Mr. Holmes.
Well, I would just like to say thank you so much for coming out tonight and giving us an update. We're all in this together and we're going to make it through. So,
I have a question. I have one more
okay,
question.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Darby.
I'm sorry, Dr. Smith, what kind of numbers were you looking at with teachers who wanted to teach all virtual or, did not feel comfortable coming back into the schools versus those that did?
There was some talk of doing something like a referendum along those lines, but what I didn't want to do was divide staff into 2 groups. Like Mayor Oakes just said, we got to forge through this thing together. I spoke to so many of them, and there were strong feelings on both sides. For teachers who were worried about their safety, some were pregnant, some have small children at home, some are taking care of elderly parents with a health condition. So those were some of the main concerns I heard. But again, this is unnatural for us. It's very strange walking around in a school with very few children, and we don't like it. And so we want to get through this as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. And thank you for coming out tonight and the staff and the quite a few of the school board members. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a discussion of grant application to Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation, Cochran Judicial Center, Automated External Defibrillators. Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me share with council members that Sheriff Matt Robertson has asked for this item to be on the agenda this evening. He had a personal engagement that he had committed to previously, and I offered to present the item on his behalf. This is concerns an application to the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation for a grant to fund 4 automated external defibrillators known as AEDs for the Cochran Judicial Center. This is one of those circumstances in which we became aware of the deadline for the grant and had to move forward with submission of the application before we brought it to council for formal approval. It is an application for 4 of these devices. If the grant is approved, the sheriff will coordinate the installation of the AEDs with the Public Works Department. And you have information in your agenda materials concerning the per unit cost of these devices and the total amount of the grant requested. I would also note, I think as I informed you in an email communication, that at the same time we've applied to the city's insurer, Virginia Risk Sharing Association, to also fund AEDs because we were, for the same facility, we were uncertain whether the application to the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation would be favorably considered. And given the fact that the Cochran Judicial Center is such a high traffic facility for the city, along with City Hall, where we already have AEDs, we wanted to make sure that we had funding for this installation. And I received word just this afternoon from the Virginia Risk Sharing Association that they had approved a grant in the amount of $2,100 to fund 2 AEDs for the city courthouse. So we'll see what happens with the application to the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation. We could wind up with funding for 6 devices, in which case we would approach one or both of the funding agencies and ask for their permission to use the funds to place devices perhaps in another city facility.
Okay.
So we could wind up with funding for up to 6.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'd be pleased to answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions?
There's no-
Councilwoman
Mr.
Garber?
Rosenberg, you
Yes.
answered my question. I was wanting to know if this went through and we had 6, if, you know, that just seemed like a lot to be in one building. I might be wrong on that, but I was curious as to what would happen with that, so.
And as I've suggested, we would go back to Versa, the city's insurer, or the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation, or both, and ask them for flexibility to install some of the devices at another city facility.
Any additional questions? All right. This will also be on the regular meeting agenda as item number B. Moving on to item number 4 for the work session, we have a discussion of acceptance of local emergency management performance grant from Virginia Department of Emergency Management. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor and members of council, Fire Chief Scott Garber will present this item.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for having me here tonight. Before you have a Virginia Department of Emergency Management grant known as the Local Emergency Management Planning Grant. It's a mouthful. We call it the LEMPG grant for short. Every locality in Virginia gets this funding. It's $7,500. We have to match it at a $7,500 amount. So it's a total of $15,000. For this year's $15,000, we're looking about starting a unmanned aerial vehicle program within the Fire Rescue Department, which is basically known as a drone program for short. It's technically not supposed to be called that, but that's what it is. UAVs are pretty popular now. They would be very beneficial in search and rescue missions, especially looking for lost victims, things like that. The recent floods, for the damage assessment, it would have been very, very valuable for that to assist our personnel. Multiple other missions they can be used for, but I'm happy to take any questions or clarify anything that you may have.
Right. Are there questions or comments for Fire Chief Garber?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Rosenberg.
If I may, just to highlight for council members that although this is a grant, it required no application by the city. It is provided by the state on an annual basis on the state's initiative without the requirement to submit any sort of an application. And so that's why it's coming before you to really approve the receipt of the funds rather than to approve a grant application.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, hearing no questions or comments, this will be item C on the regular work session, excuse me, item C on the regular work session, but item 4 on the,
Madam Mayor,
yes.
Mark, I'm sorry. Chief Garber, you said that the firehouse or the fire department is applying for it. I mean, would this grant, I mean, would these aerial drones be available to other agencies? In other words, to Staunton PD if they had an issue, or is this, I mean, only to be used by fire, or I'm just curious.
No, it's open for anybody. I believe the police department already has some drones. I believe IT has some drones for specific use. So we already have other departments using UAVs. This will just add to the city's capability as a whole, as well as on a regional approach as well.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Madam Mayor, Chief, how many people are qualified to
So to
navigate
actually,
the drone?
to
Yeah.
be qualified, you have, it's pretty much, and I hate to bring Kurt Plowman into the question here, but he's probably the expert on it. But they pretty much have to get a pilot's license to be able to fly these.
That's what I thought.
We have 2 personnel that have already completed the training, so we're kind of ahead of the curve for that.
You have 2 in your department?
Yes, sir.
In addition to the police department?
Correct.
Very impressive.
All right, any additional comments or questions?
Sure. I'll be happy to.
Yes,
Madam Mayor, were you going to move council on to break? Is that?
yes.
So we're a little bit ahead of schedule
are.
here. And so if council would like, Chief Garber can share with you some details about the forthcoming delivery of the department's new apparatus and the training that his department is receiving presently.
Yes, please do.
So we actually took delivery of that piece of apparatus on Tuesday afternoon. So it's kind of been hid in the fire station since then because we don't have all the training to be able to drive it properly. It's a totally different vehicle than what we currently own. That training started today. We have a group of firefighters that are professionals on it. They use them in their department for over 100 years now. So that's all they use. These gentlemen are actually from Seattle, Washington. We have 2 of them here. They came in yesterday. They were here all day with us, and we had pretty much everybody within our department studying the classroom part of it, which was about, we started at 8:30 this morning. We finished up about 3 o'clock. They're at the fairgrounds at the Gypsy Hill Park, using the large parking lot for their driver training. They will be there all day tomorrow. So you're more than welcome to come by. They're doing what they call rodeo training. They have driver training courses. So they have traffic cones set up so they can run over those instead of anything else. Saturday, you will probably see them out in the city because they will be doing driver training in the city that whole day. I guess to clarify a little bit, today they trained the whole department in the classroom training. They're only training 6 of our personnel on the driving techniques. Those 6 would then retrain the whole department instead of them, because if those 2 gentlemen tried to train all of our people, they'd be here for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So that's how they run this program. It's a nationally known program. It was part of our specification when we purchased the apparatus, and they're here for that.
Oh, that's exciting.
Chief Garber, can you explain what makes it different
So
and why
this,
you're having to have all this driving?
This new ladder truck is called a tractor drawn aerial. It's actually a tractor trailer. So it bends in the middle. The easy way to think of it, if you think of a straw, a straight straw, and try and take it around a circumference, around a circle, versus a bendy straw that bends, and how they bend and how you can kind of articulate that a little bit more. That's a very easy, rudimentary explanation of it. This vehicle actually has 2 drivers. It has the normal driver in the front, has a driver in the rear. The concept is the driver in the rear turns the opposite way to get the rear of the vehicle around tight corners and things like this. Talking to the gentleman last night when they got in about 9 o'clock, they had already driven through the city, had already done the research on our city, the topography, the tight streets, the narrow streets, and they're like, this is a city where a tractor drawn aerial is designed for. which is one of the reasons we purchased this type of ladder truck versus what we previously had or anything else on the market.
All right, well, you don't want
Thank you.
Councilman Claffey and myself driving that.
I think it'd be great fun.
I want to
We
be in the
could
back.
probably arrange that, not tomorrow because it would be
yes.
really busy, but it would be worthwhile if you're free. They'll be there. I'll probably be in and out most of the day.
And right along.
But yes, when we start doing our normal training,
Mhm.
we would invite anybody to come over because it is a very different view
Mhm.
and experience to drive the rear tractor trailer.
No doubt. No doubt.
And how much does this vehicle cost?
This vehicle was 1.55 or $1,550,000. It's about a 15-year life expectancy on this vehicle. So if you figure that out, it's about $150,000 a year investment. It has a 107-foot ladder on it, so it will reach with any building within the city.
So it has all the bells and whistles.
So yes and no.
Okay.
Even if we went back to the original design of what we currently have, which is a rear mount tower ladder,
Mhm.
the price is still about the same. Just
Oh.
because we went with a different type of apparatus did not increase or decrease. Aero apparatus runs about $1.5 million for purchase.
Okay, all right. All right.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Holmes?
would you be retiring any equipment or? is
Yeah,
this
so it replaces a 2002 rear mount tower that we currently have as in service. When our people are thoroughly trained and feel comfortable with this new piece of apparatus, equipment will be transferred to the new truck, as well as some new equipment that has been purchased, and it'll be placed in service. Our goal is to have it in service by November 1st. Mid-October would be probably my goal, but I'm kind of giving a little bit. I don't want to be too aggressive. I don't want to push our people into something they're not comfortable with yet. But after you do it a couple times, you get really comfortable with it. It becomes kind of second nature.
Would you be able to resell?
Yes, that is the plan.
Yeah.
So we have a resale market value for it.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions, comments? All right, if not, as stated, this will be item C on the regular meeting agenda. Now moving on to our break, and we are ahead of schedule, but we are now on break. Okay, it's 6:30, so we're back into our work session. The next item on the agenda is item number 5, a presentation on My Brothers and Sisters Keeper Initiative and Marcus Alert. Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item is on the agenda at the request of Councilwoman Mead. And at her request, representatives of the Staunton Equity Coalition have been invited to make a presentation, and I would like to turn it over to Councilwoman Mead for any comments that she might like to make and to make an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. I appreciate that. I think I've mentioned before that on June 12th, Staunton City Council issued a statement condemning racially motivated violence and injustice, and said that we will immediately consider specific initiatives that will help the city ensure fair and equitable treatment of all Staunton's residents and visitors, including in interactions with law enforcement. So this evening, as Mr. Rosenberg said, we'll hear a presentation by Reverend Jasmine Brooks and Megan Kramer, who are leaders of the Staunton Equity Coalition. Jasmine will offer City Council a means to launch the initiative spoken of in City Council's June 12th statement. I want to say before Jasmine begins that this is not about defunding police in Staunton, nor is it about pulling back on support for our first responders. This is about supporting and delivering on promises of this country to Staunton citizens who have every right to feel angry and afraid right now and under siege, and folks who are just plain tired of waiting for their turn. So I'm going to welcome Jasmine and Megan. Thank you.
Great. Reverend Brooks.
Hi there. Reverend Jasmine Brooks of 19 Fayette Street. I am speaking particularly on the My Brothers and Sisters Keeper Initiative alone. That's what this presentation is on. You all should have a copy of the presentation, I believe, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there have been a few minor edits since we sent the presentation in, but they're very minor, so you should still be able to keep up. We'll still be on the same page for the most part. So My Brothers and Sisters Keeper initiative was established in 2014 to help close the academic achievement gap and ensure equal opportunity both in schools and outside of schools for young Black men. Using a comprehensive approach to establishing support, the program engages the city, the school system, and families to help meet the needs of individual students. So since its establishment, the initiative has grown into an alliance that spans several cities across the United States, and the closest and one of the more successful members of the alliance is the Charlottesville community, which began its work about 2 years ago in Charlottesville. So it's our intention to help Staunton join the alliance and expand our reach to not only serve Black boys, but also Black women. So I'm on the slide 4, if you're following on the slides. So as mentioned in the previous slide, the alliance is not just about ensuring academic success in public schools, but ensuring that after graduation, students have access to post-secondary education and training or employment. This includes ensuring that students are cognitively, physically, socially, and emotionally equipped for school and life beyond it. In order to help us understand the need for the city of Staunton to commit to this alliance, because I understand, this is primarily about closing the academic achievement gap. The academic achievement gap of City Council and the city of Staunton has a role in it as well. And the part of that role comes from this list of data that we have compiled that's relevant to the successful matriculation of Black students and the lack thereof in our public schools. This data includes housing, employment, policing, city management, and academic and achievement and discipline studies. These studies unequivocally impact the student's ability to perform and excel academically. And the first slide of data is a summary in inequity in city hiring. So I'm not going to read the data out for the sake of time because the numbers do speak for themselves, but I will just go through each of them so that we all get an opportunity to see the disparities that speak to why the city should become a member of the alliance. If you scroll down to the slide on equity gaps in reading benchmark achievement in Staunton City schools, you'll see that in both reading and math, our students are barely meeting the benchmark if they're meeting the benchmark at all. These benchmark scores make clear that there is no single category by which Black students achieve at or above the level of their white counterparts. This is not a reflection of intellectual capacity and capability as much as it is a reflection of disparities that are completely out of the control of a child attending public schools. There's a summary slide if you scroll down past the reading and math benchmarks. Those several measures have been taken. So you'll see the benchmark highlight summary slide. And then if you scroll down to the next slide, you'll see the disciplinary measures. Those several measures have been taken to curb out-of-school suspensions. These numbers make clear that there's a consistent disparity in disciplinary actions taken against Black students when compared to their white counterparts. This data speaks to biases that make it almost impossible for Black students to be present and engaged in the learning process. This is the issue that has been brought up both in the school board and is now being brought to you as members of the City Council. If you continue to scroll, you'll see that those same disparities are found in policing in the city of Staunton. Though the African American population makes up only 11% of the Staunton population, we account for more than 20% of arrests. This is not merely a reflection of those who commit more crimes as much as it is a reflection of disparities in the areas of economics, politics, and policing, which you'll see in the next couple of slides, which you'll see data sets for in the next couple of slides. So the race and national home ownership and national racial wage gap is in the next 2 slides. And that is to say that what exists in Staunton is not a unique issue. It exists on a national scale. The disparities in home ownership and wages are present across the nation, but they can be addressed through intentional local initiatives, which is why the MBSK initiative matters. You scroll to the next slide, you'll see a summary slide. And this is just a slide to summarize the data that you all are looking at right now. And essentially the data shows that we have not created the most equitable environment for all of our students to flourish, but we can create that environment. So it is our hope that council will consider implementing a committee on equity, achievement, and opportunity. The responsibility of this committee would be to do the research necessary to identify the need areas in the city and to address those needs using the MBSK initiative model. Implementation with the following benchmarks in mind, with the benchmarks that you see on the slide in mind, would include formal proposals through policy and the support of a local equity officer. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? Actually, I have one. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vice Mayor. Robertson.
Jasmine, let me just, so that I can understand, when you say like the disparity, and I see it, but I mean, I reckon I'm trying to understand what are those disparities? I mean,
So
what are those suspensions? Why are they being suspended more than white, Asian, Latino? I'm just trying to understand.
So we're talking about implicit biases. We are talking about racism that manifests itself in harsher disciplinary punishments. So that's what these data sets reflect. So even though Black and brown students make up a smaller population, they're making up a larger population of those who are suspended and receiving disciplinary action.
Okay.
Right. Are there any additional questions or comments?
This is Carolyn Dull.
Carolyn Dahl?
I would be interested also in seeing the same kinds of data on gender disparities while people are capturing data. I think that's also relevant given the number of single moms that we have that are working and the salary disparities. So if there's going to be data collection, I think it'd be great to include gender disparities too. That's just a thought.
That's not a problem, but to be clear, the My Brothers and Sisters Keeper initiative is aimed at addressing racial disparities in particular, because that's where we see the largest gap.
Yeah, correct. I understand that, but whoever's collecting the data, if it's coming from HR or wherever, while they're doing it, I would just like on the side, while they're going through data, to collect that gender data as well.
Councilman Holmes?
I was gonna say, would this also include like Hispanic or other, or is it just African Americans?
That's actually something we consider because our Hispanic population is so small. It wouldn't be the biggest deal to include them in the program. But right now, our target audience is to address the racial disparities between Black students and white students.
All right, Vice Mayor Robertson.
And I'm liable to get myself in trouble right now.
Please do.
The only thing that I see, and it's something to me because it's common to me. It's common sense, and like I said, I'm probably going to stick my foot in my mouth, and I'm going to get in trouble by making this statement. How are we committed to contribute? And I reckon I'm looking at, and Brenda, I understand you were asking those questions about ethnic minority representation on city staff and council and whatever. To me, I have never been about, okay, let's have a quota system. To me, it almost, okay, we've got to have a certain number of Latino. We've got to have a certain number of Black. We've got to have a certain number of Asian. I want the best person that has applied for the job on that job. I'll make the statement. If this city had 100% Black city employees, so be it. If they're the best person for that job, so be it. I mean, that's just my take on it. I'm not for a quota system. And Brenda, maybe you can help me.
I'm not asking for, and I don't want to interrupt the fact that you're asking somebody in particular, but because this is presentation on MBS.
Sure.
I want to address the question. I also, before I answer the question, want to say that because this presentation is rolled up into the next one, I want to make clear that this is a separate presentation and we're going to spend a lot of
Gotcha.
time and
Okay.
we'll keep
All
going
right.
back and
I was
forth.
just going through it. I'm sorry.
But our goal is not to meet any type of quota. We're not giving you numbers to meet and saying, please hire this many Black folks to meet this
Okay.
particular
All
initiative.
right.
What we're saying is make the leadership reflective of the population so that those who are members of the population are reflected in the policies and procedures.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, it does.
Oh.
It does.
All right. So are you looking for this council to approve like a My Brothers and Sisters Keeper community?
We are looking for the city to become a My Brothers and Sisters Keepers community, but our specific ask, which is written in the presentation, is that you sanction a committee to work on this project.
Okay. All right. Well, has this been presented to the school board?
It has.
Okay.
Well, it's been presented to the superintendent who made the presentation on his own to the school board. And so we've been in communication with them as well.
Okay. All right. I spoke with Pastor, he likes to be called Coach Stephen Hicks. He is the founder of the My Brother's Keeper for the Richmond area. And he was telling me that every My Brothers and Sisters Keeper community is unique for that locality. And the 6 challenges, they definitely have value, because we want to be able to start at an early age. We want to be able to, like in Richmond, they're trying to start at an early age on promoting the STEM education to a lot of the African American students. And that way, once they graduate, they can go on to college, hopefully med school, and then come back to the area to serve as a doctor, for example. So he was telling me that, again, every locality is unique. I can understand the desire to want to have this committee to look into this matter, but I'd really like to hear what the school board has to say about it. As a past school board member, I don't want to overstep, and I would like to be able to coordinate with the school board to hear what they have to say on this matter, and then together the council and the school board could decide the best route to go for the city of Staunton.
Not a problem. The school board has already agreed. They sent us an email and said, we definitely want to adopt My Brothers and Sisters Keeper initiative. So I'm sure that that's what you'll find when you reach out to them. So that's not a problem to me. But I also want to make clear that with the school board's role and the city council's role are 2 distinct roles in making My Brothers and Sisters Keeper an initiative that we take on as a community, because of all of the additional components that take place outside of the public school realm.
And I understand that, but the basis of it, there's the 6 challenges that ultimately become goals. They're basically related to the school system. All of them are, 4 of them in particular. So I think it would behoove us to have a conversation with the school board, and then that way, by looking into this, we can develop the proper path to be able to expand this further in the other aspects that you mentioned, such as the housing and all that. So anyway, were there any additional questions or comments?
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Claffey.
I was noticing the very first goal and objective was to ensure that all children entering school cognitively, physically, socially, and emotionally ready. And then number 2 is to ensure that all the children read at grade level by 3rd grade, which, I mean, we're committed to as parents in the community. But I think Dr. Garrett Smith had the answer tonight, and he was saying when he was trying to get the preschool program advanced 1 year earlier and start these kids a year earlier. And of course, it was the plans he made were canceled by the COVID crisis when they ran out of money. And I'm thinking that one of the things that we need to do is to get Garrett Smith some money to get that program going. And I can see that this would be handled in the event that we were to invest a little bit of money into the educational system. I think we could get off to a good start, and it would help the school system, and it would also help this program if we were able to fund that. And I understand that this is a crazy year for funding everything.
Yeah.
But I know we're going to talk to Phil Traer later tonight. And maybe we can be trying to channel some money into this thing, which would definitely help you out.
Okay, this is Brenda Mead. Could I add something to the conversation? Hello?
Councilwoman Mead, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just don't want the focus to be to drift solely into the school systems. As the information that Jasmine has presented points out, there are, beyond education, there are discrepancies in housing, discrepancies in wages, differences in opportunity for African American and minority people in the city, in terms of our hiring and in terms of our the representation of minorities on city staff. So and on city boards and commissions. I'm not about quotas either, Mark. I did recruiting for a Fortune 500 company for 30 years. It was not about quotas, but I will tell you that what I was asked to do as a hiring manager was to make sure that I look to a diverse group of people for every opportunity that I hired for, so that I could, as you pointed out, get the right person, get the best person for the job. But if you're not seeking intentionally a diverse group of people every time you have an opening in a position, then you're missing voices. And you're also missing opportunities to develop people who may not, they may not appear to be exactly the kind of person you're looking for, but there are opportunities to develop and grow people. And so that's the focus that we should have here. And it's not just about the schools. I believe Dr. Smith and his staff and the school board have a strong focus on racial equity or racial inequity. We need to broaden that focus. And this committee or commission or whatever you want to call it would begin by identifying the areas where we have inequities and then moving forward to develop strategies to bridge the gaps.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
And Brenda, I agree with all that. Of course, the other thing, and I would ask our city manager, I mean, I'm assuming Steve, city manager, has been on the job for a year and then was assistant city manager for 5 or 6 years prior to that. But in my understanding too, what kind of balance did we have in the application thereof? I mean, did we have a lot of diverse? I mean, if we could get more of the Black community, more of the Latino, more of the Asian community to apply for those jobs, I mean, maybe we need to have that discussion as well. But as far as how we go about getting more applications.
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Darby.
I would just like to ask too, Mr. Rosenberg, maybe we could get some type of presentation from John Venn as HR to, answer some of those questions that you're talking about.
Right.
Well, Madam Mayor,
Councilman Holmes.
the way I understand it, this committee is really just going to do some fact searching and give us some advice, not actually something. It's not anything etched in stone. And I think that right now we're not represented in our council. We don't have an African American on council, and it would be nice to maybe get their viewpoint on things that we just don't get anymore. I mean, with Ophi being here, we had a gentleman who was really in contact with the community, and I think that it's nothing binding. It's more of a fact-finding kind of a program, is the way I understand it. Is that right, Doc?
MBSK is not a fact-finding initiative, and I don't want us to to be a committee that just, oh, you know, you can make a recommendation if you like, and maybe we'll take it, maybe we won't, but an actual city council sanctioned committee to do the work that needs to be done and push us in the right direction. But I also want to make sure that time will be allotted for the next person. I know that there's another presentation that will
Right.
come behind me, and clearly we're way over our time.
It's fine.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that she'll have her time as well.
Yes, go ahead. And this is Megan Kramer.
Yes,
Hi.
thank you. So I'm here to present Marcus Alert. Firstly, I wanted to thank council for having us here, and thank Jasmine for the presentation before me. But we wanted to emphasize that these are two separate agenda items, just because we're from the same coalition. I want us to all clear our thoughts and start fresh, because this is a different ask. We're from the Staunton Equity Coalition, which is a local group of 500 constituents that are committed to making local change and ensuring equity. I'm here to ask for your commitment to the Marcus Alert. Before this presentation, we submitted you a local petition with over 550 signatures supporting this measure. I don't consider this a partisan issue, but rather a common sense solution to a nationwide problem that we can all support together and that benefits law enforcement and citizens alike. The Marcus Alert is named for Marcus David Peters, a young teacher killed in a 2018 police encounter while experiencing his first ever mental health crisis. He was well loved by his community and his family, and the tragedy deeply affected the city of Richmond, Virginia. His sister, Princess Blanding, started Justice and Reformation to demand that the Marcus Alert be enacted. It now has widespread support at the state level, and the council and Mayor Stoney of the city of Richmond have committed to enacting the policy. According to the Treatment Advocacy Center, people with severe untreated mental health issues are 16 times more likely to be killed in an encounter with law enforcement than the average citizen. As we speak, 2 nights ago, a combat veteran named Damian Daniels was killed during a wellness check in San Antonio, Texas. These situations are not uncommon. Marcus Alert is a new vision for handling mental health crises in our community so that they do not lead to incarceration or, in the worst case scenario, death. Our police station has already been a leader in CIT training, and we acknowledge how wonderful that initiative is and how it has benefited our community. We know that we're fortunate to have a police department that stays ahead of the game in community-oriented policing. This system is just the next potential evolution of CIT, and it would only add to it. We want to continue being leaders in the state. The Marcus Alert, as envisioned in Richmond, would call for the creation of a community care team within the police department, composed of mental health professionals and 1 police officer. This care team would respond to mental health calls and wellness checks, and the police officer would be on site as backup only if non-lethal force was needed. A hybrid system for calling the care team would be created. Dispatch at 911 would be trained to hear words describing a mental health issue and know to dispatch the team. And a separate number would also be created to assist with the fact that many people are afraid to call 911 for wellness checks. Part of the goal of the team is to decrease mental health crises in the community in general. So when they're not out on calls, they would be doing outreach, getting to know members of their community. So hopefully if something happens, they've already met, and it's not, who are you, but hi, Michael, nice to see you. So this is necessary in our community. The 2018 CAPSAW needs assessment report stated that 33% of respondents had experienced a behavioral health issue in their home in the past year, and mental health services was ranked as the top need in the region. We must acknowledge that social workers and therapists de-escalate mental health crises without force in psych units every single day. They are uniquely qualified to handle these situations, and they provide a bridge connecting citizens with help. In Eugene, Oregon, a similar program has existed for 30 years. CAHOOTS consists of 2-person crisis intervention teams made up of a paramedic and a social worker. Here's a statement from their website. CAHOOTS handles almost 1/5 of external public safety call volume for Eugene, Oregon. A November 2016 study published in the American Journal of Preventative Medicine estimated that 20 to 50% of fatal encounters with law enforcement involve an individual with a mental illness. The CAHOOTS model demonstrates that these fatal encounters are not inevitable. Last year, out of a total of roughly 24,000 CAHOOTS calls, police backup was only requested 150 times. The cost savings are considerable. The CAHOOTS program budget is about $2.1 million annually, while the combined annual budgets for the Eugene and Springfield police departments are $90 million. In 2017, the CAHOOTS team answered 17% of the Eugene Police Department's overall call volume. The program saves the city of Eugene an estimated $8.5 million annually. In 2016, Denver approved a pilot program for the downtown area based on Cahoots. The program is called STAR and diverts low-level 911 calls to a two-person team consisting of one social worker and one paramedic. This program has also been successful and will be expanded in 2021 to the entire city. Before the meeting, I sent each member an article written by Chief Mike Ward of Alexandria, Kentucky, about his department hiring social workers. He said this: "Officers are freed up to do what they need to do. We're solving problems and helping members of our community like I've never seen in my career. The department saved up to $50,000 and saw arrested by 15%. Even outfitting a social worker as a first responder saves an estimated $9,000 in equipment." The evidence for this type of intervention is strong, and ultimately we will help increase partnership between the mental health branch of our community and law enforcement. It will also decrease stress for the police department and potentially save valuable officer time, funds, and resources. It can lower the stress of officers by allowing them to focus primarily on criminal justice. Finally, it can increase safety and care for our community. Today, we're asking for you to open up your mind to this program and add it to the legislative agenda for the city of Staunton to help with the statewide fight to enact the Marcus Alert. We would also like to be added to a public meeting agenda to consider the establishment of a work group, including the police chief, certain city employees, and a member of city council to develop a plan and recommendations for the implementation of a Marcus Alert program. We would want to work with Valley CSB and Blue Ridge CIT to create a Marcus Alert program that suits Staunton's specific needs. We want to build on the strengths of our current system, not replace it. Thank you for your time. I hope together that we can continue to find creative ways to make our community better.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right.
This is Carolyn Dole.
Carolyn Dole.
The special session that's going on now in the state legislature, both houses, the Senate and the House, are advancing Marcus Alert legislation. So I believe that we're going to get that at the state level as well. And I think locally we have done a good job here in Staunton in terms of training, and Chief Williams can correct me if I'm wrong, but training all of our police officers in crisis intervention and with the mental health department. And so the Marcus Alert is kind of the same thing, only more so, actually assigning a mental health worker. We may end up doing this as a mandate from the state, but I would certainly support any efforts to ensure that our folks with mental illness who are decompensating don't end up in our prison system or don't end up dead. And like I say, I think Staunton has done a good job dealing with that. But I certainly support that continuing effort, and I expect that we're gonna see it from the state, so we can either be proactive and have an official Marcus Alert, connection between our local CSB and the police department, which we have through, or it was through emergency services, the crisis folks, but just to formalize that. And so that's just my thoughts on where we're at now.
Any additional comments or questions? Okay, we are behind time. At this point, when it comes to the My Brothers and Sisters Keeper, give us the opportunity to speak with the school board and the school system, because we will be working hand in hand with them. And I realize that it's very broad. And also, if you can give us.
I would like to have a full presentation.
I was getting ready to say that,
from
Vice Mayor.
Chief Williams.
Yeah, if you could give us an opportunity to be able to investigate the My Brother's Keeper even further based off of your presentation with Anna Levitt with Capsol, as well as Police Chief Jim Williams with Staunton PD. And we will get back to you. So, thank you. Thank you for coming out and making everyone aware.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is item number 6, and it's also item D on the regular meeting agenda, a discussion of an ordinance to amend the the FY 2021 budget ordinance for the city of Staunton by adding budget amendment number 2 for CARES Act funded support for small businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic via the Staunton Economic Development Authority. All right, Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor, Phil Traer, the city's chief finance officer, will present this item, and then you may wish to consider deferring the presentation on the FY 2020 revenue update to the regular meeting, so that Mr. Traer is not rushed in his presentation. I think he has a fair amount of material on item 7. So he could make that presentation as a part of item D on the regular meeting agenda. So you proceed now with item 6.
Okay.
And then take your break, and then during the regular meeting, he could include item 7 when you have item D.
All right, is everyone on council agreeable?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, members of council, it's a pleasure to be here. Tonight, we are here to introduce budget amendment number 2 for FY21, which transfers $500,000 in CARES Act relief funds to the EDA in support of the Staunton CARES Grant Program. This program is designed to support local businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. To date, the city has received combined payments of $4.3 million to address the following areas related to the pandemic: medical expenses, public health expenses, payroll expenses for public safety officials, compliance with COVID-19 public health measures, economic support, and other COVID-related expenses that are reasonably necessary for the function of government. In order to receive the grants, businesses must meet multiple criteria, which includes having suffered a qualified business interruption due to COVID-19, have a physical location in the city, are current on all taxes and fees due to the city, and are locally owned and operated within the city. Additional criteria appears in your briefing. The proposed transfer is a qualified CARES Act expenditure, and the city manager has reviewed this ordinance and does recommend introduction and approval.
Any questions?
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Darby?
The criteria, the 9 bullet point criteria that's listed here,
Yes, ma'am.
is that something that was determined locally, or is that something that comes from the CARES Act specifically?
There was some local input in that, but we relied heavily upon criteria that we found in the CARES guidance.
Councilman Clapping?
Madam Mayor, Phil, on this, so far, do we have enough applications to disperse the $500,000?
As of this date, we have 34 applicants, requests totaling $366,000. So to answer your question, at this moment, we do not. There is plans to open up. The deadline was this past Friday. I believe there's plans to open it up further to the following Friday, next Friday, in order to gather more applicants. Some of the applicants, I think, were quite busy cleaning up their homes and businesses due to the flood.
What happens to the money in the event that we do not have enough applications for it?
We will transfer it back to the city, and we will find additional uses for it.
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Darby?
Mr. Traer, are the 34 businesses that's applied already, geographically speaking, is that a good composite across the whole city, or is it localized to one area or not?
I have been informed that they are businesses located throughout the city and not just the downtown area.
Vice Mayor Robertson?
Just want to make sure, Phil, tell me again exactly what is the easiest way, how do we get and apply? Tell me exactly how you apply.
There is a CARES Act application that folks can reach out to and grab from the website with the EDA and with community development. My understanding is that the Staunton Downtown Development Authority has also thrown the application notifications out to businesses. So we are broadcasting it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And it has to be the 500,000. You have to get up to 500,000 to qualify.
No, sir. We have up to $500,000 to provide. If it's not all utilized, we will bring it back into the city.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Rosenberg.
I think it would be very rushed for
Okay.
Mr. Chair to attempt his presentation in 8 minutes.
All right. Well, in that case, the the work session is now adjourned, and we will re-adjourn at 7:30 for the regular meeting of the Staunton City Council. Thank you. I'd like to call the August 27th, 2020 regular meeting to order. It's 7:30. The first item on the agenda is the mayor's introductory remarks. As mayor, I call this meeting of Staunton City Council to order. I note that this meeting is being broadcast over the city's cable channel and streamed live on the city's website so that members of the public may hear our meeting. The meeting is also being recorded. I ask the clerk of council to call the roll for confirmation of those council members present for today's meeting.
Mayor Oakes,
Here.
Ms. Darby,
Here.
Mr. Holmes,
Here.
Mr. Claffey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Here.
Ms. Dahl. Here. Ms. Mead.
Here.
I confirm that all council members are present.
Thank you. I ask that the city manager, Steve Rosenberg, note the participation of any city officials or colleagues or anyone else during today's meeting by Zoom or telephone.
Madam Mayor, all city staff and officials are participating in person. Councilwomen Dole and Mead are participating on Zoom.
Please let me mention that notice reasonable under the circumstances of this meeting has been given to the public contemporaneously with the notice provided to members of City Council. In addition to limited public seating in City Hall, access to this meeting has been provided to the public by audio feed on the city's cable channel and the city's website. During public hearings towards the beginning of the meeting and matters from the public on council's agenda towards the end of the meeting, public comments will be taken in person and by telephone. Members of the public who wish to participate in such matters by telephone at the appropriate time may call 844-854-2222, and when prompted, enter the access code 619358#. Callers will be recognized in order. The public is reminded that public hearings and matters from the public is a time for council to simply listen to your comments. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes. Detailed instructions for public participation by telephone have been publicized over the course of the past week on the city's website and Facebook page and can be found on the agenda for this meeting and on council's website at www.ci.stanton.va.us/government/city-council. Also, let me highlight and have reflected in the meeting minutes that this meeting, although being conducted in person, is also being conducted by Zoom, with virtual participation by certain members of the City Council, given the catastrophic nature of the declared emergency and disaster related to the COVID-19 outbreak, which is part of the total circumstances makes it impractical or unsafe to assemble in a single location. The meeting is being held consistent with the City Council Ordinance 2020-04 regarding continuity of government, a copy of which can be found online at www.stanton.va.us/COGORD2020-04. All right. So the next item on the agenda, I would like to state that if you come into the chambers, please make sure that you are wearing your mask. If you go out into the hallway or go to the restroom, please have your mask on. If you would like to speak during the public hearing or matters from the public, you can take your mask off. We do have wipes if you choose to use them on the microphone. But if you could please be mindful of wearing your mask. Also, if City Council members want to be recognized, please address the mayor and I will recognize you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you will please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is the invocation, moment of silence, and it's Councilman Holmes' turn.
With all the things that we've been through in the last few weeks here, I would just like to thank everybody that has helped everybody out. We've had like the SDDA has had people come out and help clean out some of the mess. And I know a lot of businesses have been hurting and are really dreading what might happen this weekend. So I'd just like to put the thought out there that you know, that Staunton's resilient and we'll all come together and we'll help each other. So that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, the next item is the mayor's report. I would like to echo Councilman Holmes' comments. Thank you to everyone that continues to help out with the restoration from the flood damage that we've had from multiple floods. We are truly Staunton strong, and thank you to everyone. Now, they are calling for some bad weather this weekend. It's my understanding we may not get hit quite as hard as first anticipated. I believe that the city manager will be discussing this under matters from the city manager. I wanted to let everyone know that between the last time we met and today, I had the honor of welcoming back the Mary Baldwin University students through Zoom. I had the honor of welcoming folks to the Ruck hiking event, which I had never even heard of a Ruck hiking event before, but apparently it's where you carry a heavy-duty backpack that's filled with like a 20-pound weight, and you go out into the city and you have clues and you have to solve the clues and you make your way back to where you started. So that was quite an adventure. I also went out to say hello to the folks that were participating in the West End Road Rally. They had large numbers, even more than last year, so that was very exciting. All right, moving on to additional items by members of council. Are there any additional items by members of council?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
I just wanted to make a statement about what's coming this weekend. And I did speak briefly to our city manager, and I reckon I wanted to let him know that we as the council will be backing them, but we ask, and understand it has been happening, that, you know, that basically it is an all hands on deck approach. You know, to have our city works, our public works, our city police, sheriff department, fire department, everybody to help as much as we can, like I said, and be proactive rather than reactive. You know, we've been faced with 2 floods downtown, and they've kind of been flash floods, but we do have, at least in this case, we know that this is coming. And it's kind of weird. I looked at some Weather Channel things, and the course of this storm, and some of the young ones may not ever know this, but the course of this storm is taking the exact same course as Camille in '69, except that Camille was a lot slower and dumped a whole lot more water. So I just, you know, and I know that our city staff has been working tirelessly, and I want to commend them for that. But like I said, those area businesses that possibly have those floodgates, if you'd all think that it's going to hit, put them up. You know, it's a whole lot better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And you may lose a day to put a floodgate up, and that'd be a whole lot better than losing 2 or 3 weeks trying to clean up from a flood. So I just want to commend our city staff, and please to our area businesses, and area homes, let's be proactive and let's not be reactive in this case. Okay, thank you.
Councilman
Madam Mayor.
Clappy.
As council liaison, I had the pleasure of attending a conference call for the library board on August 20th at 4 o'clock, and I thank the library board for their assistance in gathering all the supplies after the first flood. I think I was before the second flood, but they did a great job. And I guess the big news was we're going to have a limited reopening of the library coming up on first week of September. And it's going to be more a grab and go type deal. They've removed the couches and the chairs, and you can't go hang out at the library like we once did. But the COVID precautions are not going to allow that. But they are back to being open, and they also reported that what they were experiencing with the call-in, where you emailed your book request and then stopped by to pick it up, and the library staff was bringing it out. It was just phenomenal. They were getting over 100 books a day in people's hands. So they've really been hustling, but the library is coming back, which is good news. And then this morning, I attended a meeting again as council liaison for the EDA. I am happy to report that we lost a member, Bill Seibert, who was the vice chair earlier this summer. And the EDA elected Ophi Kyle this morning as vice chairman. And he accepted that position, so he'll be taking over with Bill Baldigo as vice chair of the EDA. And then there was a lengthy discussion about, well, I guess the small business thing that they're handling it. We're going to talk about it in item D, so I won't go into that. But it's been a busy week, and again, the flood, the amount of people that you're seeing out that are responding to this flood thing is just unbelievable, and it makes you aware of what a great city we live in.
Thank you. Any additional items by members of council?
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Darby.
I was able to attend the first Planning Commission meeting as council liaison this past week, and that was very informative, and I think they do a nice job. So I look forward to bringing information back to the council from that. Thanks to Mr. Rhodes for his welcoming me. And just same sentiments that, Staunton, everyone is just doing such a great job helping folks, helping each other out. And as we ask businesses to prepare, I would also just say, please prepare for the citizens, homeowners, that, you just never know if it's gonna affect you. So we all should just try to get our things in order in case something does come our way. So thank you very much.
All right. Hearing no other.
This is Carolyn Dole.
Councilwoman Dole.
I would like to send a special thank you out to the Central United Methodist Church for coordinating with their region's emergency disaster response team and the early emergency response team. They have done outstanding work. And I know firsthand because they helped me remove what was a finished basement to now an unfinished basement for the most part. So they gave us a good jump on that. So I think it's great that they're doing that. These fellows were from the Winchester area. And then on another note, the oldest World War II veteran is going to be celebrating his 111th birthday.
Wow.
And they are trying to coordinate, the National World War II Museum is trying to coordinate a mail birthday card shower for him because there can't be a party because of COVID. So anyone that would be interested in sending him a birthday card, this is the address. It's the National WW2, like Roman numeral, which is a capital I, Museum, care of Happy 111th Mr. Brooks, exclamation point, 945 Magazine Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, LA, 70130. And if you didn't get that down because you didn't have a pen handy, just contact me and I'll be happy to give you that address. But he's going to be celebrating his 111th in September.
Oh, that's incredible.
Fantastic.
Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. You have received your work session and regular meeting minutes. I will entertain a motion for approval for the October 13, 2020 work session and regular meeting minutes.
Madam Mayor, so moved. Or do we have it?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to do the bell.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
I don't have that in front of me. So you got that there?
Madam Mayor, one
Council-
thing, in regards to the meeting of August the 13th,
Yes.
I would like to make sure that it's on the record that during one of the votes for the nominating committee,
Okay.
our clerk at the time, she did not call my name. So it was not Faith. It was the lady that was standing in for
For
Faith.
substitute? Okay.
Yes. And
Look-
so I would have voted in favor of it. I think it was a unanimous vote, but I wanted to make sure that that was properly noted.
Okay. Do you want to put that in a form of a motion to approve the minutes with that added?
Yes, I would ask that the regular meeting minutes of August the 13th include that correction or addition,
Okay. That you voted positive?
that I voted in the affirmative for the nominating.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion to approve the work session and regular meeting minutes with the addition that Councilwoman Darby voted in the affirmative for the nominations for August 13th, 2020. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Vice Mayor Robertson. Any further discussion? All right. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Ms. Dahl. Aye. Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Clappy.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. All right, so the next item we have for the regular meeting is item A, a public hearing and consideration of a request for Eno Vieri for a special use permit for 430 North New Street under the provisions of SCC 18.60.070 users permit on review of Chapter 18.60B2 General Business District of Title 18 zoning of the Staunton City Code. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor, Rodney Rhodes, the city's senior planner, will present this item.
Thank you, Mr.
Madam Mayor,
Rhodes.
City Council members. Before you tonight is a request by the new owner of 430 North New Street, Mr. Enio Vieira. 430 North New Street is a multifamily dwelling. It has 4 units at the intersection of North New Street and Point Street. It is zone B2, and Mr. Vieira would like to add 2 additional units to the ground floor. And the reason that this is coming before you is because in the B2 General Business District, residential is not permitted on the ground floor by right. It requires a special use permit. So he has applied for the special use permit. This multifamily dwelling structure has been there for approximately 100 years. We've determined that back in the 60s and 70s, there were at least 5 apartments at this location and various businesses on that first floor, including a radio station back in the 80s. But now that the bottom floor is just being used for storage, and he would like to convert that into 2 additional apartments. The only concern that staff had with this initially was with off-street parking. The zoning ordinance requires that multifamily units have 2 parking spaces per unit off-street, and it has to be also on the property where the units are. And in this case, the owner has several parcels right there together that go from North New Street all the way to North Augusta Street, right across from the fire station. And it appeared that some of these parking spaces that we would be utilizing for the apartments were probably on some of his adjoining lots. Therefore, we said that we would need to vacate, minor subdivisions, vacate the interior property lines, shift them, do whatever's necessary to get the parking spaces on the lots. Otherwise, staff supported this request. Generally, that area, although it's zoned B2 general business, it's predominantly residential with a couple churches in that area. At the Planning Commission meeting on July 16th, 2020, the commission conducted a public hearing on and considered the request. No one spoke in opposition to the request. I would note that no one has called up the office regarding tonight's meeting based on our advertisements or adjacent property owner notifications to ask any questions about this request. And after conducting the public hearing in July, the Planning Commission on a unanimous vote recommended to approve the special use permit with the following conditions. 1, a plat must be submitted, reviewed, approved, and recorded prior to the special use permit taking effect. And 2, a scale drawing of the parking lot plan shall be submitted to city staff for review. And I would note that Mr. Vieira has already completed those 2 tasks.
Oh, okay.
I think in your packet, we included the parking plan that was done by surveyor. And he also submitted a plat plan that we reviewed, approved, and as of today, it has been recorded. So
Perfect.
even in advance of tonight's meeting, which was not a requirement, he has completed all the conditions.
Perfect.
I'll be glad to answer any questions I have at this time or after you conduct the public hearing. Mr. Vieira is sitting behind me to answer any questions you may have.
All right, are there any questions?
So city staff
Vice
has-
Mayor Roberts.
I'm sorry. So city staff has no problems whatsoever with this plan?
None whatsoever. I would note, I failed to mention Mr. Vieira plans to make some improvements to that parking lot. His plan shows 14 spaces. Right now, it's kind of gravel and kind of helter-skelter as far as parking in there. He plans to pave it, stripe it, put bumper blocks in it.
Okay.
All right. All right.
Mayor Dole, this is Brenda Mead.
Go ahead, Ms. Mead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mr. Vieira for making an investment in our community. I don't think this is the first time he has worked on rehabilitating or building in Staunton, and I think he'll make a great landlord, and I just want to thank him for that.
All right. Hearing no other questions or oh, we do. All right, Councilman Clapp? No, you're good? Okay. All right, well, hearing no other questions or comments, I will bang the gavel. That'll open up the public hearing. If you are for or against it, please come to the podium and state your position. And once the public hearing is closed, I will bang the gavel, and then the city council can take a vote. The public hearing is now open. Would anyone wish to speak?
Oh.
Would you like to, Mr. Vieira?
Oh, really? No,
Yeah.
I just wanted you guys' decision. I mean, I did whatever was in my hands to make, prove get high enough parking space and that. I guess it's just in you guys' hand to decide if I'd be able to do that or not.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you. Thank you, we really appreciate that. We do have somebody, okay.
Madam Mayor, we have one caller on the line, and we can check to see if they're calling about the public hearing. There's the possibility they're waiting for matters for the public, in which case we would defer them.
Great.
But we can check the line now if you
Please
would
do.
like. The caller whose number ends in 22, are you calling about the public hearing on the special use permit?
No.
We will come back to you during matters from the public. Thank you.
All right, anyone else that would like to speak concerning the public hearing? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. I'll entertain a motion from City Council.
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Darby?
I move that council approve the special use permit for 430 North New Street as recommended by the Planning Commission.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Madam Mayor,
All right, we have a second by Councilman Councilman Holmes,
Very good.
any further discussion?
I was just going to ask you, what kind of time frame, Mr. Vieira, are you, I mean, you're looking at finishing all of this?
Yes, as soon as you guys give me the okay, I want to jump on it and make it happen.
Okay, I mean, a
I
year?
guess I hope, no, not that much. I hope by New Year, I was done.
Okay.
I got people's waiting for
Gotcha.
the apartments.
All right, Mr. Vieira, I would like to echo Councilwoman Mead's comments. Thank you for investing in the city of Staunton.
Amen.
Thank you, sir.
And by the way, I want to thank you guys because the city been doing a great job with the flooding. I get my firehouse property get damaged with the water, and the city been helping. I mean, come take the trash, and I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Good.
Thank you. All right, hearing no additional comments, Ms. Simmons, please call the roll.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Ms. Dahl,
Aye.
Mayor Oates,
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is item B. This was item 3 on your work session agenda. Consideration of grant application to Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation, Cochran Center, Automated External Defibrillators. Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. This item is on your regular meeting agenda at the request of Sheriff Matt Robertson, who had a personal engagement this evening, and I offered to present this item for him. The subject before you is an application to the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation for a grant in the amount of $5,800 with no local match required to fund the purchase of 4 AEDs for the Cochran Judicial Center. We learned of the deadline for this application before your meeting date. The deadline was August 18th, so it's before you for retroactive approval. As I noted during the work session, we also have made application to the city's insurer, the Virginia Risk Sharing Association, to fund 2 AEDs for the same facility. We learned this afternoon that that grant had been awarded in the amount of $2,100. We'll wait to see how the application from the Firehouse Subs Foundation is handled. If we do receive approval for all 4 AEDs pursuant to that application, we'll go back to the granting agencies and ask for some flexibility and hopefully find other locations in the city where we can place some of these units because I think there's not needed in the Cochran Judicial Center more than 4 of them. So if we wind up with funding for 6, we'll ask for some leeway from the granting agencies and find other places for 2 of them.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Vice
Mr.
Mayor
Rosenberg,
Robertson.
I do know that Commonwealth's Attorney Office has none in theirs. I don't know whether that's a possibility. So,
thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for item B, consideration of a grant application to Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation, Cochran Center, Automated External Defibrillators.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Holmes.
I move that to the extent required by law, City Council authorize application for and acceptance for a grant for the Firehouse Sub Public Safety Foundation to fund 4 automated external defibrillators for the Cochran Judicial Center retroactively to August 18th, 2020 as proposed.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor by Councilman Holmes. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Claffey. Any further discussion? Ms. Simmons, please call the roll.
Ms. Dahl,
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Darby.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. All right, the next item is item C, consideration of acceptance of local emergency management performance grant from Virginia Department of Emergency Management. Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We sent Chief Garber home for the evening. And so I'll present this item. During your work session, you heard Chief Garber brief you about this grant program administered by the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. It's the Local Emergency Management Performance Grant Program. It's an annual funding program which provides funding to every locality in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The city is slated to receive a grant from VDEM, as it's known, in the amount of $7,500. This is a federally funded, state-distributed grant program, and the proposed use of the $7,500 by the City Fire Rescue Department is to acquire a new public safety unmanned aerial vehicle, a UAV, which will be used for search and rescue missions, special events, and assessment of damages caused by natural disasters such as the recent floods. The grant does require a local match in the amount of $7,500, but that will be funded using what are known as aid to localities funding, which is provided by the Virginia Department of Fire Programs. So the net to the city is that there's no city-derived funding required. The other state funds will be used to satisfy the match requirement. Mr. Traer, did I get that right? Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Rosenberg? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for the consideration of acceptance of local emergency management performance grant from Virginia Department of Emergency Management.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Holmes,
I move that City Council approve acceptance of the award to the City of Staunton of a local emergency management performance grant in the amount of $7,500 from the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, and authorize the city manager or his designate to complete any actions necessary in the connection with such grant as proposed.
all right, thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Councilwoman Darby has seconded. Any further discussion? Ms. Simmons, please call the roll.
Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Ms. Dahl,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, so the next item is item D, the introduction and consideration of an ordinance to amend the FY 2021 budget ordinance for the city of Staunton by adding budget amendment number 2 for CARES Act funded support for small businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic via the Staunton Economic Development Authority. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Phil Traer, the city's chief finance officer, will present this item.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, it's a pleasure to be back. Tonight, we are here to consider a budget amendment to transfer CARES Act relief funds in the amount of $500,000 to the EDA in support of the Staunton CARES Grant Program, which is designed to support local businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The city has received combined payments of $4.3 million to address the economic impact within our city, and these are qualified uses of the CARES Act funding. Selection criteria and additional qualified expenses have been reviewed during the work session, and the city manager has reviewed this ordinance and recommends approval.
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Traer? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for item D.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Claffey.
I make a motion to approve an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2021 budget ordinance of the city of Staunton by adding budget amendment number 2 for the CARES Act funded support for small businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic via the Staunton Economic Development Authority.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second by Vice Mayor Robertson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Simmons, please call the roll.
Ms. Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Ms. Dahl,
Aye.
Mayor Oates,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, the second part to item D, Mr. Trayer will go over the Staunton City Council, August 27, 2020, FY 2020 initial revenue results. Mr. Trayer.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, we are here to review with council our initial revenue results for FY 2020. I will caution you, these are unaudited revenues, but they are a pretty close projection of where we feel like we're going to be at. We'll start with a review of information previously provided to council during the revised budgeting process. Prior to the shutdown, the city was experiencing positive variance in most of our local revenue sources. As reported to council on March 18, 2020, at the time, our sales tax was $219,000 over the same time last year. Meals tax was up $240,000, lodging tax $148,000. Personal property was already $200,000 over budget, and real estate tax was expected to be at budgetary levels. Slide 3. In a matter of days, our FY 2020 revenue projections were completely upended. State sales tax was projected to finish the months of March through June at just 60% of the same time last year. Meals tax just 33%, lodging tax 25%. Real estate tax delinquencies was forecasted to increase by 5%, which represented a reduction of $675,000. Slide 4. Overall, as a result of the economic contraction, FY 2020 general fund revenues were projected to be $2.6 million less than budget. These projections closely mirrored Jim Regenbaugh's Fiscal Analytics 2020 projections for Staunton for the months of March through June. The main difference was primarily the real estate tax delinquency factor. Unknown at the time of the projections was the magnitude of the CARES Act funding. Additional unemployment benefits of $600 a week, as well as support for businesses, schools, and local governments helped us immensely. Slide 5. Actual revenues for the months of March through June exceeded projections for meals, lodging, sales, and real estate by $2.3 million. As can be seen by the slide, meals tax was up $719,000 over projections. Lodging tax was up $66,000. Sales tax up $699,000, and real estate tax was $836,000 over projections. Slide 6. Year-to-date, unaudited revenues posted through June 30th total $60.9 million versus a revised budget of $59.9 million for a positive variance of just over $1 million, or 1.7%. Positive variance in property taxes, local taxes, federal revenues helped to offset losses in service charges, state revenue, and fines and forfeitures. To be clear, this does not include CARES Act money, nor does it include the $1.4 million that we transferred over to shore up FY 2020 revenues. On slide 7, we have a few bullet points pertaining to expenses and year-end timeline. The spending freeze enacted by the city manager in March 2020 is projected to produce a savings of upwards of $1 million plus. A firm expense projection is not available at this time, as invoices for FY 2020 will be processed through the end of the month. Year-end entries will be posted in September and reviewed with the auditors in October. The FY 2020 audit is scheduled to be completed in November and will be presented to council the following month. Slide 8, we're going to review some of the budget assumption used for FY 21's budget. Most notably was the safety net reserve was intentionally not utilized as a budgeting strategy for FY 21's budget. Our strategy was to make difficult decisions up front and to only use safety net reserves in the event actual revenues in FY 21 were significantly below estimates. The city planned to continue to freeze positions frozen in March 2020, as well as future openings as attrition occurred. Limited exceptions were planned to be allowed as approved by the city manager. The city also forego any pay increases. They were tabled during the revised budgeting process, and 10 furlough days were budgeted in all departments with a few exceptions. Finally, we appropriated 60% of FY 21's budget. This will need this means additional appropriation will be required by council as revenues materialize and it also offers council maximum flexibility on FY21's budget. Slide 9 is disclaimer slide. Revenues can go either direction. We just don't know at this point, but we have enlisted the help of the Treasurer, Commissioner of the Revenue, as well as statewide projections to try to come up with our projections initially. And slide 10 is a summary of the reductions, revenue reductions that we made in the FY21 for our revised budget. Real estate tax, 5% delinquency. Personal property tax, we had a 4% delinquency. Meals tax, we projected 25% reduction to the original budget. Lodging tax, 20% to the original budget. Business license, 25%, and sales tax, 25%. Last month, Jim Regiball, Virginia Municipal League, provided his revised local revenue forecast for Virginia cities. Real estate tax was projected to be 5% reduction. Staunton was projected to be a 5% reduction. Personal property, 5%, Staunton 4%. Local sales tax, 10%. Staunton's projection was 25%. Business license, 15%. Staunton, 25%. Transient occupancy, 25%. Staunton, 20%. Meals tax, 25%. Staunton, 25%. All other taxes, 5%. Staunton, flat. Finally, on slide 12, we have some additional considerations. Furlough days originally scheduled for the months of July through April have been deferred to the months of September through June. Given the positive revenue performance in FY 2020 and anticipated expense savings, consideration may be given to the elimination of budgeted furlough days. Additional consideration is the flood that occurred 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. Estimated losses associated with the flood on August 8th equates to approximately $900,000. Only $350,000 of this will be reimbursed, projected to be reimbursed by insurance, which leaves us with a potential net loss of $550,000. State assistance is not known at this time. Because of decisions made in March 2020 and during the FY21 budget process, albeit unpopular, especially with employees, the city is in a position to not only absorb the losses associated with the flood, but possibly eliminate some of the furlough days. That's what I have for you at this time.
All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Trayer?
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Claffey?
Phil, going back to slide 6, where you come up with the variance of almost over $1 million. I appreciate your ability to contain expenses in the March to June period, which is great. And revenues did not fall off the face of the earth quite as badly as we thought they were going to.
Astounding, yes.
And it had a lot to do with the fact that every individual got a $1,200 check from the government, which is why your sales tax went up.
It did.
Because they spent the money, which is all fine and good. And it means that we did not fall off the face of the earth. But I guess what my point is, we've stopped doing any CIP projects, and we've had 2 floods. And do we need to spend some money on some wastewater treatment facilities? What do we need to do to switch this and make this a positive and be able to take this money and work it into some flood relief capital improvement projects? I know we stopped. We're not even looking at any capital improvement projects for fiscal year 2021. But I think the citizens want us to spend this money wisely, and they see the biggest need is water treatment.
Yes, sir.
Wastewater treatment.
There are certain projects that are proceeding that had already begun, and part of the stormwater is the Gypsy Hill stream restoration, and that is scheduled to proceed. As far as an overall plan, I think we have a new public works director coming on board, hopefully very soon, and a new city engineer. I wouldn't dare try to take a stab at what needs to be done with the projects, but I think There has been serious discussions among staff and the city manager for that very point. We are well aware that this is a high priority for council, and we will be acting accordingly.
Good. We're glad to hear that
Yes,
because
sir.
Yeah.
we're very worried about our infrastructure and if
I
we've
know.
got $1 million extra here, I'd love to see it spent where it is needed.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Oakes, this is Brenda Mead.
Councilwoman Mead?
Yeah, I don't think we have $1 million extra. I think we didn't get hit as badly as we thought we were going to get. So it's not like we have $1 million extra here. And to your point about the $1,200 stimulus checks and the $600 a week federal unemployment goose, that's going away. And as of December 31st, not only will the federal unemployment benefits go away, but the state unemployment benefits for many of these people who've been who've lost their jobs during the pandemic, they will have expended all their benefits unless something else changes. So I think we need to, as much as we need to address the stormwater issues, I think we need to keep some dry powder here and wait to see what happens in the next few months, because I think the cliff has, I think we may be looking into the abyss in about a month or two.
Madam
Mr.
Mayor,
Rosenberg.
if I may, I want to make very clear a point that I think Mr. Chair perhaps was sharing subtly, which is that we are one of the places where we're looking to use, albeit a small portion of that $1 million, is in eliminating some or all of the furlough days for the remaining employees who have not been excluded already from the furlough. So I just want to be very open and transparent with you about that.
And the first responders, that has already been
We
eliminated.
were able to use CARES Act funding to do that. And as you can appreciate, I hope, I think there's a desire on the part of others in the city workforce to be treated in a similar manner. And we can't use the CARES Act funding for them. So this is a possible source of funds in order to look at the elimination of some, at least, of the furlough days.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments for Mr. Trayer?
This is Carolyn Dole.
Councilwoman Dole?
Mr. Trayer, in terms of the real estate tax, and I don't know the extent at all, but I do know that there were some Staunton residents who paid their entire amount of real estate tax in June to try to help the city. Has there been an analysis of that?
Certainly has, ma'am. Part of the year-end closing process, and that has taken place already for that particular line item, we do defer revenue that's paid in advance to put it into the next fiscal year. So that has been deducted from FY20. It's an excellent point, but it has been deducted from FY20 and sits in FY21 as of tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If there are no other questions or comments, thank you, Mr. Trayer. And the next item on the agenda is item E, consideration of adoption of a resolution regarding pending litigation. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor, I believe this item was added to the agenda at the request of City Attorney Doug Gwynn, and hope that he will be presenting this item.
All right, Mr. Gwynn.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I know it's already almost 8:30, so I'll try to be brief. What you have before you is a draft dated 8/27/20 of a resolution entitled as follows: Resolution of the Council of the City of Staunton, Virginia regarding litigation related to continued zoning and building code violations. The upshot of the resolution is to deal with the property owner's choice to continue litigation despite the city having once more prevailed in court regarding what is probably best referred to as the wall on North Augusta Street. This win by the city represents the fourth time that the Staunton Board of Zoning Appeals has been reversed by the Circuit Court. And despite the Circuit Court having ruled again in favor of the city, the property owner has decided to protract the litigation further. And in an effort to curtail any further expense, any substantial further expense by the city, this resolution would direct litigation counsel for the city not to expend any further substantial expense at this time in response to the appeal which has been filed by the property owner. Let me just briefly read the concluding paragraph of the resolution. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Staunton, Virginia, that particularly at this time of the COVID-19 crisis, an emergency with extraordinary demands on the financial and other resources of all localities, including the City of Staunton, and the added emergency of the devastating flooding effects suffered by the City of Staunton itself, businesses, and citizens, it respectfully directs its legal counsel, including litigation counsel, to forego any more substantial expenditure of time and other resources in the litigation, except for mediation and protection of the integrity of the court record, and respectfully directs that even though the property owner has filed a petition for appeal, litigation counsel shall not prepare and shall not file a brief in opposition to the petition for appeal, provided, however, that litigation counsel shall respectfully inform the Supreme Court of Virginia of City Council's decision and directive, and that the city and zoning administrator are relying upon the complete record and authority cited, the arguments previously made, the rulings of the Circuit Court, and the Circuit Court's final order, also providing to the Virginia Supreme Court a copy of this adopted resolution. I should also mention that at the city's initiative, a motion for mediation was filed, which the Circuit Court agreed to, because we believe that that may be the best way finally to resolve this matter. Apparently, the property owner decided, however, to protract the litigation, but the mediation process is still ongoing. So the reference to mediation you heard is about a mediation session that will be held in mid-October or so. So the resolution is before you, and I will not drive you crazy by reading all the recitals. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Vice Mayor Roberts.
I'm sorry, Doug. Madam Mayor, I move the litigation involving the City of Staunton versus Deborah Chilton Maloney concerning the wall at 1403 North Augusta Street shall cease in its entirety immediately.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second.
There's a second. Any further discussion?
This is Carolyn Dole.
Councilwoman Dole?
This whole episode has to do with whether we abide and believe in the rule of law in our country. If we let this person not abide by our own ordinance because she has a powerful attorney who is friends with powerful people, and in the meantime, we're requiring other people, and we have required other people to be compliant with this law. If we cease this action, it's a travesty to our rule of law. There is no other way to describe it, and it is an invitation to anyone with money to ignore any one of our ordinances because they know that they can do it. They can refer to this particular case as case law, an example of how they don't have to abide by our ordinances either. This is disgusting.
Madam Mayor,
Vice Mayor Robertson?
I call for the question.
Ms. Simmons, call the vote.
Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Mead,
No.
Mr. Holmes,
No.
Mr. Claffey,
No.
Ms. Dole,
No.
Ms. Darby,
Aye.
Motion fails.
All right, motion has failed. I'll entertain another motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council adopt the proposed resolution regarding the litigation related to the continued zoning and building violations and direct and authorize the mayor to execute the resolution with such modifications in the final form as approved by legal counsel as provided in Mr. Wynn's proclamation.
Madam Mayor, I second that.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion?
This is Carolyn Dole.
Councilwoman Dole.
It's also a travesty for us to not represent the city in this appeal, because we have won by case law in every instance. We have won, and we only have one more to win, and this is done. And we also have the mediation going on. But if we say we're not going to represent the city in defense of our own ordinances at this time, then that sends a signal that there's no need to do mediation, because we're not going to do anything. And so I would say that someone, and I for one would do it. I will donate the money, since we now have a precedent for doing these types of things. I will donate the money for Victor Santos to continue the appeal representing the city.
And are there any other comments? All right, I would like to say that this case has been going on as long as I have been on council, just about 12 years. The city made the initial mistake. We need to take ownership of that. It's not like we went in from the very beginning and we had all our T's crossed and all our I's dotted. We made the initial mistake. This is one that we need to go ahead and take ownership and admit that we messed it up in the beginning.
This is Carolyn Dole.
Still speaking, Councilwoman Dole. Now,
we did not
Councilwoman Dole.
Mistake.
Councilwoman Dole, you're out of order. We continue this case through mediation, which means we are still spending money. The resolution itself says no further substantial resources. Substantial resources. That does not mean that we're not going to be spending additional money on this case, because we will be. It says to forego any more substantial expenditures of time and other resources in the litigation. So that means we will spend more time, we will spend more money on this case. It needs to come to an end, and it needs to come to an end tonight. This resolution does not solve the problem. It continues the spending, it continues the case. Now I'll entertain.
Are you done?
No. Councilwoman Dole, please be respectful to the chambers.
I am asking a question. I can't tell when you're finished speaking, so I ask, are you done?
Councilwoman Dole, we can't see your face, so you might want to come up on the screen so we can see you, and you might be able to see us better. But yes, I am. Go ahead, Councilwoman Dole.
That doesn't make you any bigger. I've got you as big as I can get you, and the shot is too far away.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Dole. Councilwoman Dole, go ahead.
I'm clarifying that you made a statement that was a misrepresentation. We did not make an initial error. They were told initially they could not build that wall, and they started shopping around until they found somebody who, after 2 or 3 tries, they found someone who said, yeah, well, it'll probably be okay. And even if that was the first, the law says that doesn't count. You can't, as mayor, you can't tell somebody, oh, you don't have to worry about that parking ticket, because they may abide by your comment, but it's not legal. And that was the same case here. So Doug Gwynn has explained this to us many, many times. the city was not at fault. And we have tried our best to work with this lady. We have tried to provide trucks to haul off the excess, to help in every way we could so that she's in compliance. And to not defend this when it's being appealed is a travesty. You're not helping the citizens of Staunton because you're not following the rule of law.
Right. Councilwoman Dole, we had an employee that initially told them that they could build it. So the mistake was initially by the city, and it has been going on for over 10 years. Actually going on longer than that, almost 12 years, like I stated, as long as I've been on council. So this case is not going to be resolved, and we're throwing good money after bad. Vice Mayor Robertson.
Well, and Carolyn, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, we'd originally kind of talked, we said, well, maybe we can end this thing October 1. Then in the resolution, it says now it's October 19th. Whatever you say, this case is going to go on in perpetuity because they're not going to give up. And it's been to the Supreme Court twice, and it's come back down twice. Sooner or later, enough is enough. And here we are in the middle of a pandemic, and we're spending, you know, we're $1 million or whatever it is short, and we have spent 120-some thousand plus over the last 12 years on this case. When is enough enough?
This is Carolyn Dole.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Dole.
How much is the rule of law worth? Is it not priceless that we should abide by the principle of the rule of law? And I ask at this time, Mr. Gwynn, if he would clarify if we had someone who initially told them wrong, or whether that happened subsequent to the initial response.
I'm going to call for the vote. Please, Ms. Simmons, call the vote.
Madam Mayor.
I've asked for the call for the vote. We call the vote.
Ms. Mead.
Would you ask the question again, please?
Councilman Claffey, would you state your motion again?
I move that City Council adopt a proposed resolution regarding the litigation related to continued zoning and building code violations, and direct and authorize the mayor to execute the resolution with such modifications and in the final form as approved by legal counsel.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes.
Aye.
Mr. Claffey.
Aye.
Ms. Dahl.
No.
Ms. Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Oakes.
No.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
No.
Motion carried.
All right. That takes us up to the next item, which is matters from the city manager. Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to provide council and the public with an update concerning our storm preparation efforts. Before I do so, I think probably a good time to remind those members of the public who wish to participate in matters from the public, which follows my presentation, that if they wish to be included in the queue for matters from the public, they can call now. The number is 844-854-2222. And when prompted, enter the access code for the meeting, 619358#. If I may just spend a few minutes, as I said, updating you all on storm prep efforts for Hurricane Laura. First of all, as Mayor Oakes noted, at present we seem to be on the positive side of forecasts. As recently as late this afternoon, the National Hurricane Center forecast shows our area receiving from 1 to 2 inches of rain. And it also shows that the chance of flash flooding in this region is marginal, which means that the chance of flash flooding is 5% or lower. Now, of course, that can change with the track of the forecast, and we'll be watching that closely. But we did nevertheless start our efforts yesterday, especially in the aftermath of the 2 floods that the city has experienced earlier this month. We recognize the concern and anxiety on the part of the community, and we want to be proactive rather than reactive, as Vice Mayor Robertson has suggested. We had our first planning meeting yesterday, pulled together individuals from multiple departments. We had a second such meeting this morning, and we will meet again tomorrow morning. Preparations have been underway, to some extent a continuation of work that we've already been doing since August 8th. We resumed today the distribution of sandbag materials, and that will continue again tomorrow. We have 3,000 empty bags and tons of sand, literally in the wharf parking lot, for individuals to come and assemble sandbags for their own use. We've been paying attention to our infrastructure. We have cleaned storm drain inlets, pipes, and culverts, and we have cleared debris and removed obstructions from creeks, and in particular, a couple of downtown business owners, Chip Clark and Jeff Ramsey, shared with some of our city employees their personal observations about the flood events on August 8th and August 22nd, and Mr. Clark actually accompanied Pete Kessiker in our engineering division, who's responsible for our stormwater management systems. And the 2 of them actually walked waterways from the wharf to the steam plant on Richmond Avenue. And with the benefit of that input, for which I'm quite thankful, Public Works crews have spent time targeting specific areas that required attention after the flooding that occurred on the 22nd. Public Works crews have also repaired or replaced asphalt berms that were damaged in the 2 events earlier this month. Tomorrow, the Parks and Recreation Department will begin slow release of water from Lake Thames, which will bring the water level down, increasing the capacity of the lake to capture water from that watershed. And we also have made the decision to provide free parking in both the New Street and Johnson Street parking garages beginning Friday evening and continuing until Monday morning, to encourage individuals not to park in the wharf parking lot or other low-lying areas to protect their vehicles in the event flooding does occur. Our public safety personnel are on standby in the fire rescue department. Personnel have been advised of the potential for mandatory callback for duty if there's a high response volume as the event unfolds. All swiftwater rescue gear, including the boat housed at Station 2, has been checked and prepared for use. And the Regional Technical Rescue and Swiftwater Rescue Team is in ready and available status. In the police department tomorrow, personnel will preload cones and barricades in vehicles so they can be transported and deployed quickly as needed for street closures. Tomorrow, they will also move all police vehicles to a higher level of the Johnson Street parking garage to avoid any flooding. The chief has identified off-duty personnel available to assist as needed on Saturday and Sunday. The maximum number of dispatchers will be made available on Saturday to handle an increased call volume if that occurs. And then finally, the police department's public information officer will be available on Saturday and Sunday as needed to issue public safety alerts. And that segues nicely into our broader communications effort on a citywide basis. Our team, including Lee Catlin, Morgan Smith in the city manager's office, and Katie Campbell, in the tourism department who has joined the communications effort since the outbreak of the pandemic. And they all together have done a stellar job. They geared up yesterday. We issued a media release concerning the sandbag materials. We had a more comprehensive release today that conveyed some of the information that I'm sharing with you now, and we will continue to have a robust communications program over the course of the next 2 days at a minimum. Additionally, we've engaged in direct outreach to businesses. The media release issued this afternoon did address the flood shields and the recommendation that businesses or properties equipped with those deploy them. But we also have gone directly to the businesses, and that's been done by Greg Beam of the Staunton Downtown Development Association. If he's not completed it already, he's reaching out to the owners of all 9 of those properties that are equipped with the flood shields to suggest that they be put in place. We also have been providing instructions for correct use of sandbags directly to the businesses that were affected in the last 2 events. And also those instructions are being distributed in the wharf parking lot where individuals can come to collect sandbag materials. And then finally, we've been encouraging business owners to remove and store lightweight items so that they will not be carried away by potential floodwaters, which could create blockages that would affect the stormwater system in the city. And in particular, we're going to be encouraging the participants in Dine Out in downtown quite possibly to bring their materials in either after dinner on Friday night or after breakfast on Saturday morning, so that we don't have tents and tables and chairs and other items that are used for that setup that could be washed or blown away in a storm. I noted Greg Beam's assistance with the outreach to the businesses. It's a continued partnership with the Staunton Downtown Development Association. They have been assisting with outreach and communication, using in-person contact, social media accounts, and the organization's own website to help us get out the message. And of course, they have been coordinating volunteer efforts and other resources in the aftermath of the 2 flood events, and they're doing so now in preparation for Hurricane Laura. So that's a bit of what we've been doing to get ahead of this. I'm hopeful about the forecast. As I said, we're keeping an eye on it. With these tropical storms, it can change, but if it continues as it's forecast presently, that would be a good thing rather than to see it deteriorate. And I would just like again to take the opportunity to express my thanks to the community and all of our city employees. It seems neither the community nor our frontline employees can catch a break. And hopefully this will come and go quickly and we will be none the worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. All right, so the next item is matters from the public. We are going to first take, we have a special family here. We're going to first take the special family, and then we will take calls from Zoom, and then we will go back to the audience. And if anyone else in the audience would like to speak under matters from the public, please feel free. You have 5 minutes to speak. Please state your name, your address. Please refrain from using profanity and direct your comments to the council as a whole. Thank you.
Ron Gilbert, 408 Lancelot Lane, Staunton, Virginia. With the virtual learning, pageants, going to karate, being an adult, being a parent at 51 years old with 2 small children has been really busy. However, giving back to the city and to our community has always been very important to me as a veteran, giving back to my country. So I want to embed that into my children. That being said, we had a 50-50 raffle to try to raise money for the efforts of the city of Staunton. With great support from family and friends, we was able to raise $1,050 to give back to the park in Gypsy Hill Park to help get the Tyler playground back in order. With that being said, we are also going to do another fundraiser very soon, probably starting in the next couple of days. So I would like for my daughter Grayson and Caleb to present the check to Madam Mayor, Miss Oates. Since she's been doing pageantries in the last 3 years, she was able to raise just our family alone, not bragging, but it's just good hard work, over $15,000 just for our family and friends, personal fundraisers that we've had. Giving money to the Ronald McDonald House, Women's Comfort Care, the Valley Mission. Cure Search raised almost $5,000 for Cure Search in Charlottesville. So I feel like it's up to us as citizens to continue to give back, regardless how we disagree or agree with one another. This is our city, and it's up to us to make this city where it needs to be and help each other out. With that being said, thank you. We are all Stantonian Tony Bowyer. She is offering a pageant October the 3rd for all the proceeds will be given back also to help the city of Staunton in the flood release. And we just hope and pray that we have no more floods coming through the city, that we will have to keep on doing fundraising. But if need be, our family will do so. One thing, the pageant will be on October the 3rd at the American Legion. We tried to have it at Booker T. Washington, and the Parks Department tried to charge us $30 an hour to hold that benefit pageant for the city of Staunton at that particular location, which was very disappointing to us. So we decided to have it at the American Legion. So I just wanted to bring it to y'all's attention. So maybe in the future, if we have any kind of fundraisers for the city, that we can get a location that we can use that facility without being charged to give back to the city.
Duly noted.
Thank you so much. But we thank you all for y'all's hard work and efforts, and we just want to bring that to you all tonight. And God bless you all, and God bless, and prayers for the victims right now of the hurricane going on down in Louisiana and headed this way. So thank you all, and thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you, Ron.
Wow, thank you. All right, we can now go to the callers on the Zoom for matters from the public.
The caller whose number ends in 22, do you care to address council?
No, no, I don't have a comment.
Is the caller whose number ends in the digit 68 on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Please state your name and address
Okay,
your comment. Name and address and state your comments to council.
Okay, Mitch Narduzzi, 130 South Jefferson Street. I'm going to keep this first part simple and short and trust that whatever historical grievances between myself and the majority of City Council does not hinder your willingness to pursue with haste both of the initiatives presented to you earlier during the work session by the Staunton Equity Coalition. Specifically, I'm speaking to making Staunton a My Brothers and Sisters Keeper community and the Marcus Alert. These initiatives are straightforward and have garnered extensive community backing. Was originally calling in just to encourage you to quickly follow through with actionable steps to achieve the goals and missions of both. And that's what I was originally calling in to state. And I was excited that this time around, I was hoping that I could simply call in to show support for something that is very valuable for our community. But then there was the additional item added to the agenda that I was not aware of about the decade-long battle the city has over with the wall, with the resident who built the wall on Augusta Street property that actually, if people know the full story, they wouldn't understand what's going on behind the scenes. So I feel like I just need to speak to this. Like, people that have been following this understand that this is about what the rule of law is worth. And since the majority of your supporters, for some of you city council members, are about law and order, I was very disappointed when Mayor Oakes refused to ask Doug Gwynn for his legal counsel in reference to the question that Carolyn Dole was asking for clarification to understand the full spectrum of issue. And I just want to put it out there for people that are listening in to know that what goes on behind the scenes are these backroom political alliances. We know that Senator Obenshain, well-known Republican, and I'm sure a friend of yours, has thrown his hat into the ring backing this issue. And so I really don't understand your inability to recognize how what you're doing is showing that with economic privilege that anything can be bought in this city. And I think that's a real travesty going forward, because someone of lower economic means could not allow this case to go on in perpetuity. And the reason that it has gone on this long is because this resident has the money and the political backing of your friends to make it last this long. And that is what's costing the city money. But the city does have an obligation to stand up for the rule of law. And so I hope you can separate these two issues. You take the first one that I talked about and understand the value of that without any of our grievances between us. But then I want you to hear what I'm saying about the second one, and that I'm still watching, and I'm still going to bring it up, and I'm still going to let the public know all these deals and the support that you have going on in back rooms that are politically motivated and also motivated by your privilege. Thank you.
Next caller.
The caller whose number ends in 58. Are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address and address your comments to council.
Okay, my name is Deborah Kushner. I live at 1311 North Augusta Street, and I've only recently returned to Staunton after an absence of 18 years. I came back because it felt originally like a very, very welcoming place to live. But since I've been back, I've seen widely disparate views of the town. The community-wide effort after the recent floods was truly inspirational, seeing folks come and help in so many inspiring ways and helping people they don't know. I've also been involved with the local mutual aid group, linking people in need with people who have volunteered to help. And matching up those neighbors always tugs at my heart. One little boy, overhearing his mother volunteer to subsidize groceries for someone in need, offered to donate his allowance. That's the community. But I'm troubled that a new city council has started out on a very divisive note, with a parade that only the Republicans on the council were given adequate notice of, talk of spending funds on a golf course that only a few citizens patronize, hiring private security for ambiguous reasons, then brushing off that scrutiny by offering to pay the fees with private monies. These actions aren't the best of this community. The focus on the 2A sanctuary status is not just a waste, it's detrimental. It's a waste of time and energy and serves no function beyond giving angry people a false reason to tote guns around in public and show them off. And they already have that right. Drop this issue. Let's do remember what brings us together, prioritize what's needed for critical infrastructure, help our neighbors who are suffering in these desperate economic times, protect each other from disease with the simplest of efforts, namely masks. We all need to consider our equivalent of giving up our allowance and how we can give of ourselves. We need the council to work on common needs for the greater good. And just one more item, if council has the ability to use Zoom to access these sessions, can it be made available to citizens? I do not have television, and it would really help the public to see exhibits, nuances and expressions, and to see who is talking at all times. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next caller.
Is the caller whose number ends in 67 on the line?
Yes, I am.
Please state your name and address your comments to council.
My name is Sharon Kennedy. I live at 826 North Augusta Street. And I just wanted to call in to show support for Staunton becoming a My Brothers and Sisters Keeper community, as well as implementing the Marcus Alert. And I would like to thank the members of the Staunton Equity Coalition for bringing these issues to light and for such thorough research and informative presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Is the caller whose number ends in 00 on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address your comments to council.
Thank you. My name is Allison Profeta. I live at 402 Farrier Court, and I'm also calling in to express support of Staunton becoming a My Brothers and Sisters Keeper community, as well as initiating a Marcus Alert. I think that these two things, as presented by the Staunton Equity Coalition, clearly would go a long way to protecting residents, business owners, and visitors to Staunton, as well as helping to keep our police department safer. So please, I hope that you'll consider implementing both of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Is the caller whose number ends in 39 on the line?
Yes.
Please state your name and address your comments to council.
My name is Carter Jasper, and I live at 15 South Madison, apartment 2. And I just also wanted to call in support of the My Brothers and Sisters Keeper and the Marcus Alert initiatives presented tonight. I think it's becoming more and more publicly obvious the need for systemic change, and I think that Staunton has the opportunity to extend the leadership it already shows in so many arenas to this necessary conversation around racial justice and systemic inequity. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next caller.
That's the last caller.
All right, now the podium is open to the audience. So if you would like to speak, please feel free.
Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Todd Dickerson, 206 Rolling Mill Road. I'm here with the Staunton Equity Coalition. I'm here voicing my support with the proposed Marcus Alert concept that you heard during closed session this evening. My support comes with over 20 years of experience in various healthcare roles in the community, experience and spanning from pre-hospital emergency medical services, frontline ER nursing, and also my tenure as emergency department services director at local community hospital. It is through that experience that I've seen firsthand and through many different lenses how difficult it is to navigate through the behavioral health needs of a patient in crisis. I feel that I have a solid understanding of the challenges of the patient and most definitely the challenges of those that are trying to provide care for that patient. And it's with that that the concepts of the Marcus Alert, I think, would add another layer of support and have better outcomes for the patient itself. That's not just my opinion, though. In the 2020 edition of the National Guidelines for Behavioral Health Crisis Care that's published by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration states that the minimum requirements of a mobile crisis response team to have a licensed or credentialed clinician as part of their team. And yeah, I hope this is not misunderstood that we are condemning local law enforcement. I certainly have personal vested interest in law enforcement as my father retired from 34 years of the Staunton Police Department. and have had the pleasure of working with the locality through all of my career. And so I think that what is important is that to understand they've been put in a position to be part of the care team of a patient in crisis by default. And over the years, that's a position they have notably embraced and that they have made real efforts to enhance their ability to respond. Their work with the long-standing Blue Ridge CIT program is a very tangible fruit of that labor that I had the pleasure of working with and seeing develop over the years of my tenure. However, times have changed, and that's probably not enough now. And it was a pivotal step that did obtain more training for local law enforcement, and it also made them, it enveloped them in the care delivery team more. And that's exactly what the concept of the Marcus Alert is about. It's about making them even more a part of the care team and adding layers of support that they currently don't have. And they're put in a very difficult position every day when they encounter a crisis, a patient in crisis. And so I hope that that is well understood. And it's not intended to remove law enforcement from the team. In actuality, it's going to give them actual human resources that they don't currently have available to them to help make those critical decisions from a clinician standpoint, not from a law enforcement standpoint. The devil's in the details, so to speak, but I hope that the council makes a serious consideration of moving forward on this Marcus Alert and enabling the community to provide the best care possible to those in need, as well as giving those officers on the front line the human resources to provide the best care possible. All change is difficult, no matter how positive it is, and it's often met with resistance in the beginning. However, if I've learned anything in my years as a healthcare leader, it's that when the catalyst for change is there, it will happen to you. And you can make one of two choices with that. You can be forward thinking, you can be proactive, you can be a leader in that change. You can make it work for you and the community, the ones that you're trying to serve, and make the most sense for the organization that's trying to provide that care. Or you can do nothing and let it happen to you. And the change will still happen, and you will have to succumb to things that maybe don't make as much sense for this community or this law enforcement or this community services board. And it's going to happen. I know there was some discussion in your closed session about the fact that it's in the House and the Senate right now. That's already hitting snags. It's already become a bipartisan issue. So I would implore you guys to let's make the first choice. Let's be proactive, and let's make the next step of an already solid foundation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? All right, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council. So I wanted to talk briefly about the rucking event you mentioned. That's actually called Queen City Rucking for 22.
Yes.
That you were there. Thank you for being there. So what that was for, 22 veterans commit suicide every day. So two women actually set up that event. We had a local soldier commit suicide, as some of you may know. So I just want to kind of clarify what that was about. I just want to make one other comment. One of the women that headed up that event had catastrophic damage to her house in the first flood. Got new, washer, dryer, and then the second flood did the same thing. And I want to thank the mayor for showing up in person for helping that. It meant a lot. And I wanted to address the council on one issue. Some of us parents have been forced to take alternative schooling options, such as homeschooling, private school. And so what I'm asking is that, you mentioned there's $1 million extra, and we have this wall that you all keep bickering about over and over and over again. Can we please put that crap to a rest, finally? And it's kind of embarrassing to listen to you all argue in front of the whole entire city. You guys should take that behind closed doors, find a resolution, and fix this problem. With that said, the money that is being spent on that litigation could be used for other things, such as single moms and single fathers who had to quit their jobs to teach their kids or be co-teachers at home. I tried the virtual schooling thing. I pulled my daughter out the first day. I can't maintain my career on on a wishy-washy schedule, not really knowing what's going to happen in the future. At least with homeschooling through the at home, I'm able to set up my own schedule. And a lot of people are in that same position. So what I'm proposing is that personal property taxes be waived for people that are being forced to go this route in terms of having to take alternatives. Some people are going down private tutor route. Some people are going the homeschooling route, reworking their schedules with their work, getting help in the home. It's just not maintainable. And so I think some people are gonna need some help with that. And another comment about the wall, just go tear it down. They're tearing down statues all over the state. Just go tear this stinking wall down. Be done with it, okay? I mean, I'm not really seeing what the issue is here. 12 years is a long time to be bickering about this. I'm kind of embarrassed, honestly, to have even come here tonight. The second thing I want to bring up is several months ago, we had a meeting for the Second Amendment Sanctuary Resolution where the citizens were silenced by one of your members who is no longer mayor, and several other members who've been fired and replaced. So tonight I'm asking that you revisit the Second Amendment Sanctuary Resolution, and I'd like that to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. And just also for the record, my name is James Burnett. I live at 100 Audubon Street. Been a resident here for 19 years. When I first moved here, I joined the Virginia Army National Guard right here in Staunton. Served with them for 8 years. Did a combat deployment in 2008 and 2009. We got a lot of veterans that have defended our Constitution. So to see people want to take those rights away is pretty sad. And, you know, we're talking about law and order with this whole wall thing. There's cities burning across the country because people aren't following law and order. I'd also like to see our police department get their personnel a raise, get the whole department a raise. They put their lives on the line every day. The fire department needs a raise too. These people put their lives on the line so that we all can come here and bicker about a wall. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Yes, my name is Baldwin Jennings, 332 Sharon Lane, Staunton. This wall issue should be put to rest. The gentleman that built the wall, I talked to him personally, and he did get permission, just like you said, to build the wall. And the reason he told me was he didn't like air conditioning, and he put the wall up to cut the noise down. And he also planted flowers around, or trees or bushes, or whatever you want to call it, around it. Matter of fact, you drive by it now and you don't even know it's there, unless you're really looking for it. So this is asinine. And we keep pushing this wall thing. Let's put that thing to rest. And the city definitely did screw up on it. No ifs and ands about it. The man got permission, and he did it like he was supposed to. So let's drop this wall thing. We had long enough. It's asinine. You don't even know it's there unless you drive by and really look at it, look for it. So let's eliminate it, period. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
My name is Yvonne Wilson. I live on 2017 First Street in Staunton. Given the socio-political climate we are in, I can say that we are all in solidarity concerning the plight of the underprivileged. And though I am aligned with my brothers and sisters keepers' goals, the method in which to achieve them is where I differ. Firstly, I do have my misgivings concerning my brothers and sisters keeper, though this was started by President Obama, and I applaud the nobility of his intent. How he went about changes concerning education while establishing this initiative is not exactly stellar. For starters, the department under Obama sued the state of Louisiana in order to block implementation of vouchers for many public school students for the 2014-2015 academic year. The DOJ's primary argument was that letting underprivileged students take advantage of vouchers to attend private schools can disrupt the racial balance in public schools. About 80% of the kids who received the voucher were a minority. For 7 years of his presidency, Obama has proposed funding the Washington, D.C. Opportunity Scholarship Program, a school choice program that allows inner-city students in the nation's capital to escape failing and often dangerous public schools. The Opportunity Scholarship Program is a measly $20 million per year. During the Bush years, thousands of minority children took advantage of the program at a cost of between $8 and $10 grand. That's about 1/3 lower than it would cost to educate students in Washington, D.C.'s public schools. The program serves about 5,000 students. Almost all the students who were awarded scholarship were Blacks and Latinos. Graduation rates of these vouchered minority students average over 90%, compared to 56% in public schools. This is what Obama wanted to defund, yet he sent his daughters to the high-end Sidwell Friends private school. I do not know of any My Brother, Sister Keeper chapters established in any city that actually supports school choice. If I am wrong, then please, by all means, correct me. Another thing to note is that African immigrants, those from the Sudan, Nigeria, Ghana, Somalia, Ethiopia, as well as other war-torn African countries, have a higher graduation rate in high school and a higher acceptance rate into Ivy League schools than African Americans. Many of these students speak English as a second language. I propose a different approach. I am actually working on an initiative of my own modeled after the St. Louis Community Reentry Program, or CREP, in St. Louis County, Missouri. In this program, nonviolent offenders, upon their release, were required employment per the terms of their release/parole. The CREP took initiative and trained their ex-offender clients in peer counseling and community service, after which they would get assigned to alternative schools and nursing homes in their area, mentoring troubled and distressed youth, as well as providing assistance and companionship to the elderly. These counselors earned wages for their services, and it gave a winning start on their resumes. This one facet of the program had a 100% success rate, reduced recidivism in ex-offenders that participated in this program, and showed the declination of crime within the youth population that received their services. In turn, this program's aim evolved from crime recovery into crime prevention. The bonus being that those who were mentored, those distressed students, by this program became peer counselors themselves and continued the positive cycle. I, for one, desire not only to emulate such a program in the city of Staunton, but would also like to take it in a step further in regards to vocational education in the areas of STEM, which the council has mentioned, civics and the arts. I will be presenting a model of my initiative to the school board at a later date. There are those that feel that not only are they disconnected, but they are ignored, insulted, and patronized by a system which they feel will always victimize them. My aim is to turn these victims into victors. But we cannot do this by just treating the symptoms without treating the root cause. The cause being a culture and climate that celebrates victimhood instead of victory. And to show that I am seriously committed to such a cause.
Awesome.
Oh, is it time?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Your 5 minutes is up.
Can I come back again
Absolutely.
if no one else is speaking?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Robert Clemmer, 302 Audubon Street. First time caller, long time listener. So I'm here to make a mountain out of mountains out of molehills. But there, some talks here. There I was downtown Staunton, volunteering, and parking enforcement, the lady with the chalk, came walking by and marked my tire. I didn't mean to be incredulous, but I did mean to be defiant. And I wiped the chalk off of my tire. Now, don't do that, whatever you do. Not wipe it. I've had interactions with police department and everything, but nowhere had it ever escalated as quickly as wiping the chalk off of my tire. And oh my gosh, I heard it. I instantly regretted it, and I walked away with tail between my leg. I did ask the officer though, because she said that she could cite me and write me up for it. And I asked for clarity, what specifically. And she just said, I'm keeping my eye on you. I know what your car looks like. And I'm like, all right, okay. So I called the Staunton Police Department, and I got transferred up the line and left the message. And eventually, the officer in charge of parking enforcement called me up, and I wanted to ask, was there something that I had done wrong by wiping the chalk off of my tire? And he goes, there's 4 inches of code. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but she couldn't have written you up. Now, that's not to say that if they went through the 4 inches of code, they could have found something. But I relayed this to other folks, and I've had folks that read, court cases and everything, have a couple of lawyer friends. And there was this lady in Michigan. She didn't want her tires chalked, Taylor versus Saginaw. And eventually that court case went all the way up to a federal appeals court in the federal Sixth Circuit Court. So in federal court, Michigan and Missouri, it's unconstitutional to do this. And so there's a lot of talk about don't want officers to enforce unconstitutional Second Amendment policies. But what about our Fourth Amendment and being a sanctuary Fourth Amendment city? In the court case there, they argued that marking the tire was considered a search. And a search without a warrant is, that's legally dubious and not a thing. And so I think, rather than all these things that people are talking about being decisive, and I think that this would be a softball knockout win for you all if you re-examined parking enforcement in downtown and made it so that way we wouldn't get fined. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? We have
Aaron.
Aaron.
Good evening, members of council. Hello. I'm here today also to express my support for measures like my brother's keeper and my sister's keeper and Marcus alert. Great ideas. Hopefully something like that can happen here. I'm also here to say that the last time I was here, there was some confusion that ended up in the news about whether or not protected speech was taking place here. It was interesting. I just want to let everybody know that I know that you received my email, Mr. Robertson and Mr. Darby, and I just like you to know that you are being paid attention to. And one last thing, it was really nice in the city of Staunton to see that people were willing to, maybe talk to neighbors that they never spoke to before and help out. That was a nice thing. So, oh yeah, and there's one more great thing that's going on. We went out today to the hotel down there, and wouldn't you know it, if I hadn't gone to go take a picture of the tropical storm clouds rolling in, I wouldn't have noticed that they'd started removing letters. The hotel's gone right now. The only thing it says is Stonewall Axon. So I would like to thank city staff and members of council who were in touch, and certainly like to thank members of various departments and commissions for their expedient delivery of these results, which we demanded and are very pleased to see. It's not going to be the last you heard from us. Basically, this council should understand that that's one goal that we achieved, and we have our sights set on others.
Your name and that.
Oh, thank you. This is Aaron Barber. I live at 312 Fayette Street, Staunton, Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you, Baldwin. Yes.
Jasmine Brooks, 19.5 Fayette Street. I am obviously in support of My Brothers and Sisters Keeper initiative. I just want to make a brief response to the earlier comments opposing, and that is just to clarify that the My Brothers Keeper initiative that was started in 2014 is no longer federally funded and therefore has the flexibility to shape the program in the way that we would like to see it happen, which is why it's so important for us to sanction a committee, which is the direct ask that was made earlier, not so much. Well, yeah, I'll just say that was the direct ask that was made earlier. And so I am hoping that voices like yours and voices like the one that was spoken earlier will be willing to contribute to that committee and contribute to the initiative so that we can work together to move our city forward and move our school system forward, particularly because some of the concerns that were named would not even actually be concerns of the city of Staunton Public Schools, like the vouchers, for a perfect example. We don't actually have those in the city of Staunton. So those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? All right.
Do I have to state my name again?
Yes, please.
Again, this is Yvonne Wilson that lives on 2017 First Street in Staunton. Thank you, Jasmine, for responding to my comments. I do, before I ran out of time, I also wanted to let you know that one of the concerns that was stated was to have more African American representation in city council. I think that's one of the things that was listed. So I have considered that, and to show that I am seriously committed to such a cause, I, as a descendant of the oldest recorded slave family in the United States, I am officially announcing my candidacy for city council in the next city council election. So I am doing that. I'm not doing it because I feel there needs to be a African American representation. I only need to represent myself. I hope that while I am working towards getting on the city council or win that election, that we can build bridges and discuss initiatives that would actually be useful as far as bridging the gap between distressed students. I, for one, do not ascribe to victimhood because of my race. I'm a former Marine. My family has been recorded here since 1865, and we are still here. I have doctors, lawyers, judges, reporters in my family, and we didn't need an initiative except our own. I want to promote an initiative that teaches those who don't believe that they have the power that they actually do. That's what I want. That's my desire for all races, not just Black or white or Hispanic. And I think that there is a culture that encourages victimhood. And I've never been a victim. I never will be. I don't need someone to speak for me just because I'm the same color as them. I'm my own person. I also want to make a quick comment to those that are a little bit have issues with the Second Amendment sanctuary. For those of you that are against it, a lot of you are of political leanings that want to remind that white people have white privilege. And if you're going to remind white people of their hand in slavery, let's not forget that gun control was also a racist measure. Gun control was implemented because the freedmen and Black slaves that ran away, they did not want them armed. And as far as I'm concerned, anybody who stands against that is standing with the slave masters. And I don't care how you feel about me saying it. Anyone who tells me that I cannot exercise my Second Amendment right is no different than the slave masters who beat us and forced us to pick crops for them. I will not abide by it. I am about self-reliance. And if you feel that I need to be babysat, then maybe you shouldn't be in charge. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne.
And anyone else? All right, hearing none, as mayor of the city of Staunton, I call this meeting adjourned.